anyways, I guess we should also get to the actual conversation. This one is basically more of a you present, I bumble around. So however you want to delve into it, you're free to go. I just will need to go through the slides for you, I suppose. So you kind of tell me when you want me to switch to something else, or when you want to turn on a video that we're going to watch together, because there's a couple videos that we also are going to look at. So
Yeah, we can go through the slides as they are. There's a couple of little topics that'll come up. We'll go over like what the results were last time, and then go over a few of the parties that are active in the UK, and then what's been happening with the election, what's been happening after the election, all that kind of stuff. So if you're not from the UK and you don't know what's been going on, or you have a little bit of an idea, then hopefully it'll be interesting. And if you're from the UK, at least it wasn't a depressing result, so we can have fun reliving it.
Yeah, and if people have different opinions in chat, that's fine as long as you're civil about them. that's what I wish we could uphold in these talks, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to be. I'll put it out there right now. I'm biased. I've been and I was talking to Anka about it yesterday. We had a chat. I've been an activist in a party for nearly 10 years now, so I'm very biased going into this. So I've tried my best to keep it out.
You're quite the veteran already.
I am, yeah. Well, there are people that I know who have been doing stuff a lot longer, but yeah, I guess for most people.
Well, you can say that about everything.
Chef,
you trying to stir the shit up, huh? Yeah, or you have to ban somebody else. But yeah, the fake reform candidates, I don't know how much you prepared about that one. I know you mentioned it yesterday.
I haven't prepared anything because there was an article today talking about how apparently it's not true.
So there were
investigated. Apparently not. They investigated it and it's not true, which just so happened to come out today, which is very good timing.
Perfect. Then we know that at least in this election there were no AI-generated candidates, but this is definitely a possibility and from now on. That's the world we live in now, I guess.
The scary reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were catfish. All right. I'm just... They're not helping. Ignore chat. Let's go. Let's look at what happened with the elections prior, like the old, like the previous election round, and then this one.
Yeah, so we can go through the first couple slides for that, yeah.
Right, so you already have... Oh yeah, here's a comparison.
Yeah, so this is the map between the 2019 election and the 2024 one. So in 2019, Boris Johnson had come into power. He wanted to increase the majority that he had in Parliament, because at the time they didn't have one. It was a hung Parliament, so no one party had complete control. So he called an early election, which we call a snap election, and he managed to win quite a large majority of 39 seats. And after that, he was basically able to get everything that he wanted done, which primarily was about Brexit. The whole campaign was ran on get Brexit done, stop the left-wing extremists who are going to stop Brexit from getting into power. And because of that, the Labour Party basically had one of the worst results it's had since the early 1900s because of that.
Damn, so you can thank Boris Johnson for the Brexit, basically.
There's a lot of other people I'd blame.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
But certainly him, yeah.
Yeah, but can you remind me, when did Brexit happen in this timeline?
So the vote was in 2016, and then it was 2021 is when it actually happened.
Yeah, when they actually were like, okay, we're definitely going through with this. All of the operations are going through.
2019 basically gave Boris Johnson. Yeah, 2019 basically gave Boris Johnson the ability to do whatever he needed to get done, and then 2 years later, Brexit finally happened.
Yeah, it does feel like forever ago. That's why I'm asking, because it feels like I was thinking, wait, did Brexit happen around 2019? No, it feels much older than that by now. Yeah. So also, why do I get the impression that in the UK there's been a lot of like snap elections like this? That just like every election round, people are like, oh no, let's do these earlier. We're just impatient.
Yeah, we had one in 2017, 2019, and then we've just had one now. So we've had 3 of them.
Yeah, people just wanna take shit down and start over.
Sometimes
Although,
it makes sense to do it. Other times you could just not do it.
yeah, I will have the question of why exactly, because I looked ahead at some slides and I did see that this time around, the call for the snap election was done in a very like silly way. I don't know, standing in the rain, being weird, and I don't really understand why it was so for me, just looking at that report, it just looked like it was in a very dramatic way how it happened, but we'll get to that.
It was very funny.
Yeah. So what is the difference to 2024 then?
So 2019, we have a Conservative majority of 39 seats. Coming into 2024 now, we now have the Labour Party, which has been changed since 2019. 2019, they were a lot more left-wing. 2024, we have a bit more of a centrist Social Democratic Labour Party, led by Keir Starmer, who's a former human rights lawyer. He came in, managed to change the party up, and now we have a much larger majority of 412 seats in Parliament, with the Conservatives being nearly wiped out. Basically, they've gone from over 300 seats to just about 100.
Yeah, that's pretty massive. And I mean, you can see that on the map too, that like, I mean, there's still a lot of blue constituencies, but yeah, a lot less than what you had in 2019.
Well, you can see the further up that you go on the map, there's a lot of areas that there's blue, then red, then blue, then red. A lot of these areas are areas that Boris Johnson in particular managed to win with the whole Get Brexit Done thing. He managed to get Northern English areas that usually vote Labour to vote Conservative to get Brexit done. But now that they feel completely betrayed by the Conservatives, they've just switched back to Labour, and that's where a lot of their problems will come from. And as Chef says as well, a lot of the Lib Dems, the Liberal Democrats, the sort of centrist Liberal Party, have managed to take a lot of Conservative areas in the particularly southwest of England as well.
Yeah, I see. That's these orange sections. What about? Yeah, I think I was remarking this yesterday too, that basically there's still this section in Scotland that is conservative and that kind of remained consistent. Why
So
were
that
you?
area is this.
Yeah.
No, go on, go on.
No, you go on.
If you're about to ask what's going on with it,
Yeah,
it's
basically.
the Scottish borders are a lot more conservative because it's a lot more older people. It's a bit of a, yeah, like Sandbard says, it's a bit of a richer area. But also, if you're not pro-independence, which people in the borders tend not to be, because they live right on the border with England and they travel between the two countries a lot, they tend to vote for the party that's going to oppose independence. And right now, that is a lot of the parties, but the party that's really big on it is the Conservative and Unionist Party. It's literally in their name.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense because if there was the independence, they wouldn't have such an ease to travel into England again. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, other than that, I don't really know. Like, there's Northern Ireland that I guess there's more fragmentation there now, but I don't really like they still have this primary party that they elect that is seemed kind of interesting because they actually refuse to take part in parliament even though they are elected. Um
Yeah, Sinn Féin is an interesting one. We might get to that a little bit later on.
Yeah, I
But it
think
was
that's the
definitely a
plan.
shock election result, that one.
I mean, it still kind of maintained its seats from the 2019. Now there's just more fragmented stuff when it comes to the DUP, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. If we go to the next slides, then we can look at the actual how many seats our party's got.
So yeah, 411 for the Labour Party. You have around what, like 550 total seats?
650.
650. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to talk about these numbers. I think we should probably also just like refer to this back after we also maybe talk about what kind of each party stands for what. Otherwise they're
Yeah, we
just
can
like
do.
numbers on a scale. So
Yeah, well, we can do that now as well, I think. So going from left to right, which is not the order that I've written my stuff down in, so this is going to be interesting. So at the very end on the left, you have the Conservative Party. As you can see, massive drop in the level of support that they had there, 300 over 300 down to 120 odds. Labour Party pretty much in the opposite direction, 200 at the last election, way up to 411, actually nearly beating their record from 1997 of winning 418 seats, very close to beating that record. Scottish National Party, hand up bias, that's my party, did particularly badly, went from pretty much every seat in Scotland to somehow doing worse than we were predicted to do. Liberal Democrats, they did very, very well. There's sort of been a trend of whenever something has happened with the Conservative Party, the Lib Dems will end up winning a seat off of them. And that's translated now into the actual general election, where they've managed to completely reverse the trajectory that they were on previously, where it looked like every election it was just getting worse for them. And then with some of the other parties, Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, this is the pro keep Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom, not become part of the Irish Republic Party. They've been suffering quite a bit with scandals, which has led to the pro-Irish Reunification Party, Sinn Féin, managing to pick up their seats and becoming the largest party now in Northern Ireland for the first time in history. And then a couple of the other smaller parties, Plaid Cymru, PC, that's the Welsh Independence Party. They've managed to basically keep what they had before, managing to stop Labour from taking some of their seats. Same with the Social Democratic Labour Party in Northern Ireland. Green Party have done really well in England. They've managed to quadruple their seats, particularly in areas of England that have maybe not been as enthusiastic about voting for the Labour Party since moving to a more centrist area. And then way behind, just slightly behind Anka there, is the Reform UK Party. If you know the name Nigel Farage, sort of a big figure in the right wing.
yeah.
Thank you, Anka.
Yeah, I had to move away, but yeah, I'm not happy to do that for Nigel Farage, but you know, we're still
For education, you're doing
for
it for
education,
education, not for
yes.
him.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's the party that was formerly would have been known as UKIP, has now become this Reform UK party. They're all about sort of more traditional social values, anti-immigration, that sort of thing. Think National Rally in France, or even maybe at a stretch, Alternative for Deutschland in Germany.
Oh yeah.
Perhaps maybe slightly less extremist than them, but
so
that's
less
sort of
Nazi.
party. Oh, a lot less, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I also see the speaker is reserved one seat just because you have to have a moderator. It's not a speaker party.
Yeah, the interesting thing about, I'll say interesting, but if you're interested in politics, it's interesting. For the speaker, the opposition parties, the other parties don't tend to stand a candidate in the speaker's constituency. So the speaker right now is Lindsay Hoyle, who's a Labour Party member. So the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats likely did not stand a candidate there, just out of courtesy. Some of the other parties, like So they just won't stand in the constituency for election. They'll allow Lindsay Hoyle to basically be re-elected because he's the speaker. It's kind of a courtesy thing. It's just the sort of traditional thing that you do. Other smaller parties like Reform UK maybe don't abide by that, but the bigger parties will do.
So because he was just previously the speaker, it's just re-elected.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a traditional nicety that the bigger parties tend to observe.
I see.
Yes, Goosey, the milk-shaked man on the internet, Nigel Farage.
I'm not gonna ask what that means. Moving on. Yeah. Also interesting. I mean, it's nice that they have more Green Party like representation, but it's still barely just 4 seats.
It is. It's a problem of the electoral system, which we might get onto in a second, basically. And then I think there's another slide after this that should be like well, actually, it'll show what the breakdown was between how people voted and what actually happened. So you can see, because of the voting system that we're using in the UK, that Labour only got nationally 34% of the votes, but get 63% of the representation in the chamber.
Why? How does this work then?
Well, actually, we could skip ahead quickly to... I can try and load the video up in the...
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go
room.
Into the room thing. Time to learn about the first past the post. I mean, I did read about that because Angus actually had that in the script, but I guess I still don't understand why it manifests
your vote
into
counts
such a
in a
large...
general election. First off, you're not actually voting and I'll explain why. Instead,
Wait, what?
you're deciding who should represent you and your local area in Parliament. That local area is called a constituency, and there are 650 of them in the UK. Some are big, some are small, but each is made up of roughly the same number of voters, typically between 60 and 80,000. So, on election day, voters in each constituency choose one person from a list of candidates. Most of them are in a political party, but they don't have to be. The candidate with the most votes in each constituency wins. This system of voting is called first past the post, a term that comes from horse racing. All a candidate needs to be elected is to get more votes than any other candidate in their constituency. The winner then becomes a Member of Parliament, an MP. That means they get a seat in the House of Commons, where they can debate and vote on laws and check up on the government's work. But the seats are actually benches, and there's only space for about 430 of the 650 MPs to sit down at the same time. To sit down, the way we elect our MPs explains why you hear a lot of talk about safe and marginal seats in the...
Wait, were you... Just a second, were you skipping through something? Because I don't know why we get these stutters in the video.
I've not been skipping anything, no.
Okay, interesting. I don't know, maybe we're trying to use this this thing to watch the videos at the same time, but it's not perfect. Yeah, but so this is still kind of like the splitting up in basically how it works in the United States as well, the system of voting. And I see why then you end up doing this whole thing where each state gets a representative, but you don't really reflect the parliament in the same voting proportions as the people actually voted, but rather just it's kind of more divvied up in some weird way. I'm gonna keep playing the video though.
Sit down at the same time. The way we elect our MPs explains why you hear a lot of talk about safe and marginal seats in the run-up to an election. A safe seat is one that a candidate from a certain party is likely to win, usually after they've been elected with a large majority last time. But a seat is never completely safe. Large majorities have been overturned. Now, a marginal seat is one where the result is likely to be much closer, and it's those marginal seats that are the most hotly contested during an election.
Oh no, it's doing it again.
But what happens to your vote if you didn't back the winner? Put simply, nothing happens with it at all. At the last election, 14 million votes cast were for losing candidates. That's almost half of all the votes at that election. And what that means is that the share of votes each party gets on election day isn't the same as the number of seats it ends up with in Parliament. Take the 2015 general election. Conservative Party candidates got 37% of votes across the country, but it still ended up with over half the seats in Parliament. UKIP, on the other hand, only got 1 seat in the House of Commons, despite a national vote share of almost 13%. But whichever candidate does win on election day, they're supposed to represent everyone in their constituency, and not just the people who voted for them. So who gets to be Prime Minister then? That would usually be the leader of the party with the most MPs in Parliament. And what does the Prime Minister do? We'll leave that for another video.
And we'll never find out because we're not watching that video.
Oh well.
And I'm not telling anyone. So.
No, don't tell us. Let us forever guessing. I'm kind of reconsidering if we should keep watching through the SyncTube thing because that was very stuttery and the audio and the picture were not synced at all. So
was it really bad? I had it okay on my end, so I don't know if it's maybe whoever has control of it has a better time with it, perhaps.
I don't know.
So maybe I could send them to you, you can load them up, and then I can just deal with the stuttering because I've watched them before.
Sure, I can load them up from the document because I do have the links and you gotta just tell me when. Yeah. So I'm not sure what's the difference from the United States system then, or even I would even not be sure to tell you if in Germany it's also not similar, that basically you have first past the post in every state here. Like I literally have no clue.
I think Germany, like most other European countries, has a different, more proportional system. America and the UK share pretty much the same system for voting for the House of Representatives, I believe. So each vote basically count. Start that sentence again. You vote for somebody, whoever gets the most votes wins, even if they only have like 30% of the total vote. If they get 30% and the next candidate gets 29%, you've won the seat.
Yeah.
It's a terrible system. And it ends up with systems like this where you have the Greens on 7%, but only getting 1% of the representation. Or
I have a question though. Is the House of Commons and the House of Representatives the same thing, or are they different organs?
Representatives is America, Commons is the UK.
Ah, right. And the Lords, House of Lords is the equivalent to the Senate. I see.
Yeah, if the Senate was massively unelected, yeah.
I didn't catch from the video though what happens, because it's funny that in the in the House, like in the basically meeting room where they're doing this like House of Commons gatherings, they don't have enough seats for everybody. So what happens to those extra 250 people that don't fit in or so? They just don't show up.
If they really want to be in there, they tend to stand by the door, or they'll stand by the speaker's chair. So in the middle of the room where the speaker is checking over everything, they'll usually stand by there. If there's like a big vote going on, or a minister is being called in to answer questions to the Commons, they'll just have to stand up. There's a whole archaic system for how you actually reserve a seat as well, that we probably don't have time to go into.
I see.
But
So
if you can't reserve your seat, you're basically standing.
yeah, you don't get to climb on anybody's shoulders. That's sad. But
I mean, you
that's
probably
fine.
could if you really wanted to. I can't imagine there'd be a rule against it.
Okay, good to know. So, do you have anything more to say about the like voting process or the parties involved, or do you want to talk about like why this early election even happened to begin with?
If you or chat don't have any questions, then yeah, we can we can move on to the next one. I know that Shark Dog there is asking about, is the Lords' role to check the laws? That's pretty much what the Lords are meant to do, Shark Dog. Their role is to scrutinise whatever legislation has come forward from the House of Commons, and then they can approve it or they can send it back. Yeah, the same as the Senate and the House of Representatives in America.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
Sugar was saying something about the Dutch system, though. Proportional representation for parliament, but their Senate is elected indirectly via the provincial elections, and the province will send people to the Senate. So it's kind of like one is proportional and the other one is still kind of like the system of first past the post with the provincial votes.
That's interesting. I've not fully looked into the Dutch system. But that's interesting. I have to note that down, Shark Dog. Thank you.
Each province does send multiple people, though, so it's not just a single representative for the entire province.
Oh, that's very simple that's similar to how we do it in Scotland then. That's similar to our system, which is definitely far too complicated to talk about now.
Okay. Yeah, let's stick to our eggs.
But yeah, in that case we can move on to why the election was called in the first place. Why do we have an election now rather than in a few months' time when it should really have happened? The election in 2019 was in December, so really this year it should have been a December election, but we had it called early. And the reason for that is basically the Conservative Party have just not done very well. Their polling has just gone massively wrong for them. People have become so fed up with them that it was inevitable they were going to lose. It was about when is the best time to call an election to stop them badly losing at this point.
So was it a move from the Conservatives to call the election early?
It was, yeah.
I see. Well, what's all the big scandal about, basically? Like, how have they been digging their own grave? Let's see.
Well, the first big one would probably be a lot of stuff that happened under Boris Johnson. So Boris Johnson, first of all, during the COVID pandemic, there was a lockdown. You weren't allowed to go outside. You weren't allowed to see family. You weren't able to visit people in hospital.
Yeah.
People in the official government buildings, however, were having parties. They were drinking alcohol. They were meeting up and doing things multiple times that they should not have been doing. On top of that, there was a whole range of scandals involving government ministers, things that were going on in Parliament that shouldn't have been happening. And because of that, at some point, basically every member of the cabinet, the executive branch of the government, decided to resign en masse. It was the biggest resignation in history. 62 ministers were gone within the space of a couple of days. And there's a video that I've just sent you that basically shows what happened with that.
All right, let's load that one up as well. See if it works.
Now, the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, do you accept it was a grave error to appoint Chris Pincher to your government?
Yes, I think it was a mistake.
We're just hearing that Sajid Javid has resigned.
What? I'm terribly sorry, we have to stop there. Rishi Sunak has resigned. The Chancellor has resigned. That is it.
You're not resigning as Vice Chair.
Well, no, look, I think you have to resign.
The Prime Minister has lost the confidence of a very large part of a very parliamentary party.
There's been 7 more resignations. This is a night of resignations.
And the big question this morning on everyone's lips, can Boris Johnson survive?
As for those who are left, the charge of the lightweight brigade.
Does the Prime Minister think there are any circumstances in which he should resign?
Frankly, Mr. Speaker, the job of a Prime Minister in difficult circumstances when he's been handed a colossal mandate is to keep going, and that's what I'm going to do.
We've had now 27 resignations. This is extremely fast-moving. The Prime Minister is meant to be up at the liaison committee at 3 p.m.
The earliest date that I can see for a general election is 2 years from now.
Sorry. I think we cannot use this website at all. I don't know what's happening. It just stutters really poorly.
That's okay. We can just have it up on stream however you need it, and I'll be like a couple of seconds behind. But if you have a question, I'll be caught up by then.
Yeah, I was hoping
it's
we could use the sync thing, but it just doesn't work. So
Thank you for trying, but honestly, it's fine. This will work.
2 years from now.
It's being reported that there's a delegation of your cabinet colleagues waiting in Downing Street to tell you when you finish here today that it's time for you to go.
I'm not going to give a running commentary on political events. We're going to get on with the government of the country.
Sorry, I'm just being told in my ear that the Prime Minister has fired Michael Gove. Michael Gove was not at the Prime Minister's questions.
Nadeem Zahawi, Chancellor for 24 hours, has now written to the Prime Minister and told him to go. Michelle Donovan, the new Education Secretary, in post for about 36 hours, has now resigned.
It's gone too far. He has to go.
Because he's a buffoon. He's an idiot and you can't trust him. Leave. Go. Just go.
Just hearing from a very high-level government source telling me that it's done.
If it happens, it will involve the lectern coming out and the Prime Minister addressing everybody who's here. There's a lot of people here in the streets.
My friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable. I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks.
Them's the breaks. Yeah, that's what he said.
I'd forgotten that was what he'd said at the time. It was so long ago now.
Yeah, like when was this? 2 years ago.
This was 2019.
2019? This says that this broadcast was from 2022.
2022. Oh, that's still so long ago. In my head, anyway. There is so much that's happened since then. So that was Boris Johnson. That happened. So then the Conservatives had a leadership election. Is that even a British expression? It's probably not, Raddy. Boris Johnson was technically born in New York, so it's probably an American one.
Is it? Because it's like I don't know what he's trying to say. Them's the breaks. But anyways.
Them's the breaks. But yeah, that was Boris Johnson. Then
there was a lot of people just bailing after being like in office for less than 2 days. That seemed very chaotic.
Yeah, that's pretty much how bad it got for them. Yeah. And then from Boris Johnson, it then went on to the next Prime Minister, Liz Truss. She had somehow an even worse time. One of the first things that she did was announce that there would be an emergency budget would happen to get the country back up its feet. Brexit had happened, which means that the economy was doing a bit badly. So she wanted to make a load of tax cuts, about 46 billion worth of them. And she wanted to put more spending into business, about 60 billion. And because the budget had been called at short notice, nobody had officially gone over it. All of the usual independent bodies that would check over the figures to make sure they wouldn't do something bad like crash the economy hadn't been able to see it. And because of that, once all these were announced,
it crashed.
The value of the pound fell. Interest rates went up, which meant that the government's borrowing costs went up. The international credit rating for the UK went from AAA to AA, which I'm told is a very bad thing. And because of all this, inflation got high, which means that people were having to spend more money on energy and basic stuff that they need to eat during what was already a bad time for inflation because of the war in Ukraine. And also people's mortgages were increasing in price because of it, because all of these companies were getting worried.
Yeah, not a great time to be a citizen. Do we also watch this video about from mini budget to market turmoil?
Yeah, we can. I was just going to load that up. Yeah.
Okay, so this is about the mini budget just mentioned. Credit rating dropping when you are not in a supportive trading block is bad. When a big trading block, it is a lot less bad. So you mean like if they were still in the EU? I'm guessing that's what Shark Dog means. But yeah. All right, let's watch this.
Today's statement is about growth. High tax rates damage Britain's competitiveness.
Can we afford these tax cuts, Chancellor?
I'm just looking at the pound, and it's ticking every second, and it's ticking lower. This is literally just over the course of today.
What does that tell us about the markets? Is that the correct word to use? How the markets response to quasi?
He's saying they don't like our currency anymore because they think it's going to inflate.
The Chancellor, you have to admit, how is it not a gamble?
So what is a gamble is thinking that you can keep raising taxes and getting prosperity, which was clearly not working.
What happens if the pound continues to slide like that?
So what you know is that as Chancellor of the Exchequer, I don't comment on market movements. What I am focused on is growing the economy.
Well, the British pound has fallen to its lowest level ever against the US dollar.
Importing things are going to get more expensive if this situation remains, and that, of course, contributes to inflation. Prices going up incrementally.
The pound has been so badly smashed around, and sentiment is now so negative on it. Does the Bank of England
Pound has been pounded.
try to intervene?
What are you going to do about the turmoil on the markets this morning, sir?
I'm not going to make any comment now. Thank you.
There has been intense contact between Chancellor's office and the Bank of England Governor's office trying to work out how they could reassure the markets.
I think it's hard not to draw the conclusion that all this will require a significant monetary policy response. Let me leave it there.
We're paying just over £1,000 at the moment on our mortgage. Every time we check, it looks like it's going up even more.
Because we're buying from other countries and with the exchange rate, we've got to put our prices up. People out there haven't got more money to spend.
The IMF joining a growing international backlash and telling the Chancellor that he should scrap his tax cuts for the high earners.
Yeah, Chancellor's mini budget, described as untargeted fiscal packages, will not only add to inflationary pressure, but also likely to increase inequality, make things less fair. It's unusual for them to make a statement like that.
Just heard from the Bank of England a rather extraordinary statement, which is an intervention, they say, to try to restore orderly market conditions. The statement goes on, were dysfunction in this market to continue or worsen, there would be a material risk to UK financial stability. We're already seeing it, aren't we? Mortgage lenders are pulling some of their products.
More than 900 of them overnight.
A further 321 mortgage products have been withdrawn from sale.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Where have you been?
I think we have to look at what situation this country would be in if we hadn't acted.
Do you have a message for the markets, Mr. Kwarteng?
Absolutely. We're sticking to the growth plan and we're going to help people with energy bills.
Well, a new poll highlights the scale of the crisis facing the Prime Minister. It shows Labour 33 points ahead.
Prime Minister and the Chancellor preparing to meet the head of the Office for Budget Responsibility. That's the independent watchdog for the UK's public finances.
Well, I welcome it happening, but there is an element of closing the stable door after the horse has bolted.
Now, Richard Hughes of the Office for Budget Responsibility headed in for a meeting at 10 o'clock and left about half an hour later, so not a very long meeting.
So, isn't the meeting a little too late?
So awkward.
Yeah, it's the very odd thing of journalists standing outside trying to get comments from people going in and out, and either nobody speaks or they give a funny little hello and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, but it's also like these people are just done talking and then you're badgering them, you know?
Yeah. So that was that. That was basically, and as you saw in the video, like that is when Labour really started to gain in popularity. Like you have them 30 points ahead, 54% people saying that they'd prefer to vote for them, which was a massive changeover from when Boris Johnson had just won the election. Like this was the real point where people were saying, okay, we can't have any more of this, we need to change government.
Understandably.
And then the bit that I didn't put in there that I think a lot of people may have seen already is that Liz Truss had to leave after 44 days in office, shortest serving Prime Minister. A newspaper did a thing where they said, can she outlive lettuce from rotting? Turns out she couldn't. The lettuce was still okay. So
Yeah, I remember the lettuce, the stupid video. But okay. And there was also Sunak, actually. Rishi Sunak still followed as Prime Minister.
yeah,
But
Rishi
also-
Sunak was basically, yep.
Also couldn't really deliver on people's requests, like their needs.
Yeah, he was trying to balance between what he thinks his core support group want, but also what people more generally want. He came in with like 5 things he wanted to do. He wanted to make sure inflation was halved. He wanted economic growth, like every government does. He wanted to reduce the government debt, which has increased because of the mini budget. He wanted to cut the waiting lists for NHS England because those had been increasing ever since COVID and even before that. And he also wanted to stop small boats with migrants and refugees that have been coming over between France over the English Channel to land in the UK to claim asylum. That's the thing that they've really been pushing on. Oh, it was 49 days. Thank you, Sharkdog. 49 days. Still pretty bad.
Is this when the whole thing with like transporting migrants to Rwanda started be floating around, or was this like a plan that was cooked up earlier?
That was something that I believe was being fought up towards the end of Boris Johnson. Liz Truss was a really big fan of it, and then Rishi Sunak just sort of took it over, I believe.
I see.
So a few months in, about a year of him being in office, poll ratings were still pretty bad. And then in May of this year, inflation had been reduced. The UK had come out of a recession, but he was still having issues with NHS waiting times. He was still having issues with the small boats. And as you just said, there was a whole scheme about basically doing a deal with Rwanda to take people who are claiming asylum, fly them over to Rwanda where they would be kept and they would have their applications processed there. Nothing ever got done with that because every time they tried to send someone over to Rwanda, they would say it's against their human rights. The courts would then have to decide on it, and the courts kept deciding that yes, it is against their human rights to be sent off somewhere if we don't know they're going to be safe. So nothing got done with that. There was a plan to even remove the UK from the European Convention of Human Rights, which was the big problem that was stopping any of these flights taking off.
Interesting, because that sounds like Brexiters would also want that.
Well, it's nothing to do with Brexit, is the thing. It was brought in it was something that Winston Churchill, a British Prime Minister, along with other European countries, wanted to put in place after World War II to basically make sure that we wouldn't have a situation where concentration camps could be created anymore.
Yeah.
Very basic human rights stuff.
Yeah, and I guess there would be the fear that, well, people are just getting deported into what basically constitutes a concentration camp in Rwanda, like if it's not overseen properly.
Yeah, and so that situation unfolded, and then 2 months ago, there was a rumour just before one of the sessions where the Prime Minister gets up every Wednesday and has to take questions from members of Parliament. There was a rumour spreading before that Rishi Sunak was going to call an election. After he'd finished answering questions, he'd gone back to 10 Downing Street, his residence, and basically called his cabinet to come and have a meeting, which is unusual because they usually meet on a Tuesday. The Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, was in Albania. He had to fly back from that meeting, and you can see on the screen he was only there for about an hour and a half. before he had to get a private jet back, which cost about £60,000.
Jesus, why do you have to get a private jet? And also, why did he have to come back for this? Like, it's just so extra to me.
It's very extra, yeah. And then later that day, he went out in front of Downing Street. Whenever the Prime Minister wants to announce something, they usually stand outside numbered in Downing Street. They get a lectern out that has like the government logo on it. This time the logo was of the Conservative Party, which is how journalists knew that he's definitely calling an election then. Because it's got party branding on it, which means he's basically just resigned because he's not using his official government stuff anymore.
Oh.
And at that point, it started raining. There was talk about whether they wanted to move it back indoors, and they just didn't do it. So then Rishi Sunak came out and, in one of the worst PR moves he could have possibly done, decided to do his resignation and call the election while standing in the rain.
Yeah, I can see why that's not a great look. It's just gonna make people laugh at you. Things can only get wetter as Rishi's big day proves a washout. Jesus, these headlines. So this is when he resigned as prime minister as well.
Yeah.
Why was that necessary for calling an election?
So the reason why was it necessary to call an election? Why was it necessary for him to resign?
Yeah, basically that. Like, can he not still do this while the election takes place?
Basically, if he's calling the election, he's going to start doing party political stuff, which means that he shouldn't really have government stuff attached to him. So he's sort of the interim prime minister for that time.
I
and
see.
yeah, as Radhi says, that's when Parliament just stops doing any work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get dissolved in preparation. There was a question that I had about voting.
Yeah.
That, because you mentioned, like, when you described how voting works, but there's also something interesting about who gets to vote. British qualified Commonwealth and Irish citizens aged 18 and over are eligible to register to vote in the UK parliamentary elections. Irish citizens, as in people from Ireland, like the other country?
So if they live in the UK but they have Irish citizenship, then under the peace agreement that basically stopped all of the civil war happening between the north of Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, they are classed as eligible for British citizenship, basically. You're allowed a sort of dual citizenship.
I see. Yeah, because I guess that ties in interestingly with the fact that still the party that won most votes in Northern Ireland is still a party that refuses to take part in the operations of the parliament. kind of
What I
weird.
found interesting was that members of the House of Lords can't vote. I actually didn't know that, because the two exemptions for not being able to register are you can't be in prison, and the other one is that you can't be a member of the House of Lords, which I guess...
Would that be a conflict of interest?
I suppose it kind of would be.
Okay, so what happened after this this wet dog moment?
I hadn't thought of that like a wet dog. That's actually really good, yeah. So after that, we went straight into the campaign. The campaign only lasted for 6 weeks.
Oh, you showed us postal ballot envelope in here.
I did. This is not mine. It wouldn't have mattered if it was mine anyway, but...
Yeah, but what should I show, basically?
Yeah, we can move on to that next one.
Why does this photo look like it's Photoshop?
It probably is Photoshop. Did Postal, very good, chef. Not having to use your voter ID. Very good. Because screw doing that. Yeah, I suppose that's maybe something I could mention quickly before we do that, but we don't have to change slides. So yeah, you can have 3 different ways of voting in the UK. You can do it in person, you can do it for the post, mail-in ballots if you're American, or you can ask somebody on your behalf to do it. You can get them to do it as your proxy voter. But also, as of 2022, you have to have a valid form of photo identification to prove that you are who you say you are before you go voting.
Yeah, and I remember that this was strange to me because I guess, like, in the systems I'm used to, you always have to bring your ID when you vote, except if you do the postal thing. And yeah, so it was kind of surprising that in the UK, or at least was it just in Scotland, it was a problem because the people don't actually have an ID. They have other identification documents.
Yeah, it's mostly because people just aren't used to it yet. We've only had like 2 elections since the law was brought in, and people just don't remember it because it's not the most important thing you have to remember in your life. Every couple of years, you need a bit of ID on you because we're not used to needing ID on us. We don't have like ID cards. Yeah, like Chef says, we don't have ID cards or stuff like that we need to carry on us. Like places like I think France does ID cards that you carry around with you.
Germany too, like
Germany as well, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I carry my ID around also because sometimes you get asked to show your ID when you pick up a package at the post even, and they want to make sure it's the same person. Like it's kind of common to have one on you.
Yeah, it's not something that we've quite gotten used to. I think there was talk about it back in the early 2000s when there was more talk of doing more stuff with the European Union, and obviously a lot of European countries, the big ones like Germany and France, used their ID cards, so it would have made sense if we'd done the same thing. But we just don't really like doing it for whatever reason. So we've just never done it, and now it's become an issue. But yeah, after all of that, all of the stuff that was going on with coming up to the election, we then had the campaign had started, and one of the earliest things that happened was the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings in Normandy, which basically heralded the ending of World War II. Rishi Sunak turned up as the leader of the UK. All the world leaders from the global powers that were on the Allied side were there. Rishi Sunak decided to leave early because he had a pre-recorded interview booked with one of the news channels in the UK.
Is that why you have this picture here?
Yeah, this picture, the very is Rishi under Aeonghus? What? Oh.
No, because I don't understand why David Cameron is there.
It's
no, this is Justin Trudeau. Trudeau was under Aeonghus. Yeah, I moved you back down in the corner.
Thank you. I was slightly confused by what Chef meant for a brief moment. I was like, what do you mean he's under me?
I was too for a second, but then I remember I had to move you because in the previous slide you were covering some text.
Okay. So David Cameron was there because the foreign secretaries of the different countries were also there.
Right.
He ended up taking over for Rishi Sunak after he'd left. So you had these photos where instead of the Prime Minister being with all the other Prime Ministers and Presidents, you instead have the Foreign Secretary and also Keir Starmer during an election campaign where you maybe don't want your opponent getting pictures with all the other world leaders.
Oh no.
Suddenly getting pictures with all the world leaders.
Oh, damn, all the bad moves in politics here. At least the optics, the bad optics that you don't want to do.
Disrespecting veterans and also letting your opponent get all the limelight.
And what was this thing he had to attend that was so important? An interview for ITV?
Landings. For ITV, yeah. It was just an interview. It was just a random interview to just talk about why he's called the election and what the Conservatives will do if they win the election. That was it was nothing that important that couldn't have waited, and it was pre-recorded. It wasn't live, so he could have changed what day.
That is so bizarre.
It was a very stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
Speaking politically, yeah.
I see that.
Could have filmed it anywhere, yeah. You could have done it over. You could have done a radio interview instead.
Yeah, dumb move, but yeah, maybe good for paving the way to the Labour, helping that even more.
And then, like, the biggest news of the campaign, I think, probably for a lot of people, is that Nigel Farage, former leader of UKIP, the man who basically pushed the Conservatives to have an EU referendum, he campaigned in it. People like him convinced enough people to vote for Brexit. He's the reason that Brexit has happened, essentially. He then announced that he would be taking over as the leader of the new right-wing political party Reform UK. He would be standing as a candidate in one of the old UKIP seats, which was just a few weeks after he'd said that he wouldn't be in the campaign, he wouldn't be standing for anything because he was helping Donald Trump with his presidential campaign.
What business does he even have helping another country's president?
He's good friends with Donald Trump. Donald Trump wanted Nigel Farage to be the UK ambassador to the United States last time.
Great sign.
Yeah. And like Chef and Raddy say, Nigel Farage, he's stood in a lot of elections. He's not been particularly successful with them. But European Parliament elections in 2014, this was when UKIP and a lot of the Brexit stuff was starting to become a thing. This was when people were being told that, you know, these are the issues with the European Union. This is why we have to leave the European Union. Because of that, they did really, really well in the elections to the European Parliament. And he was part of the group that was sent to the EU Parliament. And through that, he's been able to build this platform that has now led to him finally becoming a member of Parliament.
Yeah, I see.
Then there was Ed Davey, who's the leader of the Liberal Democrats, so the centrist Liberal Party. He basically, I think there might be a couple of slides ahead.
Oh wait, like here.
Of Ed
yeah,
Davey.
there he is.
Yeah, so there's Ed Davey.
Jesus, these shots.
Having the best time. I did try to find more flattering ones, but there was just the media obviously want the silly ones. But this is what he spent a lot of his campaign doing. He spent a lot of it just doing very silly photo ops because he knew that being sort of the third or fourth party in the UK, he wasn't going to get a lot of media attention unless he did something silly like going on one of those teacup rides that you have at fairgrounds and they spin you around.
Those are actual teacups. Oh, God.
Yep. Doing a radio interview on the teacups. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because the reporter has the phone turned on to record him while he's... So do you control these teacup rides with the wheel in the middle? Or is that just for holding on?
I think that's just for holding on, yeah. But also, in seriousness, Ed Davey did what was probably the best political broadcast. So most of the political parties will get one spotlight on the TV where the different news channels will play their broadcast. It'll probably be a minute or 3 minutes long, where they basically just tell you what they're planning to do if they win the election. The Liberal Democrats decided to focus on health and social care. And Ed Davey was talking about his experience because he's a carer. He has a disabled teenage son. And he was basically talking about that. And I think pretty much everyone agrees that it was the most memorable of all of the political broadcasts. It was the most genuine one that was put out that didn't just look like it was an obvious campaign.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if this is a personal motivator to him in the way he runs his campaign and his policies, that's That's really cool.
Yeah.
If only Ed played more Gartic phone, he'd be PM now. Yeah. He didn't draw enough dicks in Gartic phone, otherwise he kind of nailed it, yeah.
Next campaign, 2029. That's what he'll do.
Mm-hmm.
And then from feel good to not quite so feel good, on the next slide, the Labour Party. They had a bit of an issue with their more left-wing members. So Keir Starmer is trying to cultivate this more centrist, more socially progressive, but economically sensible, for want of a better word, sort of party. And there are certain members of parliament who maybe wouldn't agree with that, or wouldn't go along with it, or would be a bit outspoken on it. So some of these candidates ended up being removed as candidates for the Labour Party. So Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott, and Faiza Shaheen are the big names that were. All of them, for different reasons, were given for why they'd been basically kicked out. Corbyn and Shaheen went on to stand as independent candidates. Diane Abbott was brought back in by the Labour Party because there was a few weeks where they were basically being accused of racial bias against her. And as far as Jeremy Corbyn and Faiza Shaheen are concerned, there was also allegations that they were being replaced by people who were maybe a bit more sympathetic to Keir Starmer's politics. So, for example, Faiza Shaheen was replaced by somebody who was very close to Keir Starmer's leadership bid.
Yeah, messy. Do we want to also watch the video about Diane Abbott's situation, or?
I think we can skip over it, I think, just for time.
Okay. But yeah, she's probably not thrilled to be back if the sentiment is like, yeah, we don't really want your stance or your critique of things. Good, we were only joking.
She seems to have been sort of okay with it. We'll see what happens going forward. She might actually be speaking about it tonight, because actually right now there's a big debate happening right now, so she's probably speaking in that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then even more bad stuff that was going on the next slide. Douglas Ross, who was the leader of the Conservative Party in Scotland. The Conservative Executive Committee met and said that they were going to select Douglas Ross as a candidate to stand in a constituency. They'd be replacing another candidate who was in hospital. He'd fallen ill in April. He was meant to be making a recovery soon, but they felt that it might be better if they have a different candidate. Then allegations started coming out that Douglas Ross had influenced the executive to stand in the constituency. People were not happy with the idea that an ill candidate was being pushed out to make way for him. On top of that, people were already not happy with his leadership style. And on top of that, he was also double jobbing. So he's the Member of Parliament for Moray at the time. He's also a member of the Scottish Parliament representing the Highlands and Islands. So he was in the Scottish Parliament and the UK Parliament at the same time for many years.
And you're not really supposed to do that.
You're allowed to do it, but it doesn't look good if you're the leader of the party, you're in one parliament and you're in another parliament, and you're meant to be representing the party in one of those parliaments, but you can't possibly commit full time to doing that.
Yeah.
So people were not happy about that. And because of that, eventually he had to say, I will stand down after the election.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final big thing that happened in the election is that the postal ballots, which are great, I would personally say that if you're able to do a postal ballot, because it saves you a lot of time.
This is not
This
the
is a
slide
different
for
thing,
that.
yeah. That's fine. It can stay up there though.
You mean this one? with
We can use
envelope.
that one, yeah. I didn't really have one for this, so we can use that. That's a good one. Yeah, I will say do postal ballots. However, there was apparently an issue with people who were registered in Scotland and in parts of the south of England not getting their postal votes. This was a pretty big problem, particularly in Scotland, because the timing of the election coincided with the beginning of the school holidays in Scotland. Our school holidays happen before England's do. So if you were cynical about it, you could say that the Conservatives maybe did that on purpose to stop Labour or the Scottish National Party winning more seats than them. But regardless of whatever reason it was, that meant that people were not getting their opportunity to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And also the European football was happening as well, which means that people were in Germany hoping that we would win.
I mean, Chef was
All right, you
out
don't have to
here.
laugh too hard at that. You don't have to laugh too hard.
Well, I don't know if I'm not laughing at how England did in the football thing, because I don't really care. It's more like if they had one, like you're just saying that they mostly did this to kind of avoid voter turnover rather than specific people showing up, because this would also influence their own supporters then.
It probably would have, yeah. The voter ID rules have also kind of affected Conservative votes in a way that they perhaps didn't think it would. But yeah, if I was being cynical about it, that's what I would say. But regardless,
I mean, maybe
there
it
was an
was
issue.
also just like an issue of mismanagement, misplanning, you know.
It probably was as well. They only had 6 weeks to do the election.
Yeah, that is quite a short notice to get everything as it should properly be. But you had the thing also about the exit poll here.
We do. We have the exit poll. We can put the video up for that if you want.
All right.
So this is the exit poll that's conducted by Ipsos Mori. It's a big UK polling agency. You get 20,000 or so voters from 133 different polling areas. And they speak to people and ask them how they voted. And from that, they can try and figure out who's won the election. And usually they're very close to what the result is.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the moment on BBC News that they did it. All the main news channels would have done this at the exact same time, but the BBC is the only one I can find a clip that's not like 10 minutes long. So,
all right.
And as Big Ben strikes 10, the exit poll is predicting a Labour landslide.
Sir Keir Starmer will become Prime Minister with a majority of around 170 seats.
The exit poll predicts that Labour will have captured 410 seats, adding 209. It suggests the Conservatives will have lost 241 MPs, landing on 131.
On to the other numbers. The Liberal Democrats up 53 on 61 seats. Reform on 13 seats. The SNP down 38 seats. According to this exit poll, on 10, Plaid Cymru are on 4, they're up 2, and the Greens are up 1.
Yeah, so this is what it was looking like. And yeah, it does sound quite accurate of what actually happened.
yeah, it was very close to it. The only one that was a bit more off than most of them was the Reform UK vote. That one was quite far off, but aside from that, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. The
was
Reform
very
one
good.
only got 5, not 14.
Yeah.
13, I mean. But yeah, Green also had a bit more than polled.
Yeah, if we have time, we could quickly look at what the different results were from the different countries. I don't think we did that before.
No, we did actually skip that bit. If you want, I can go back.
Yeah, we can just very quickly look at them just to see how different it is in the different countries and what parties are where.
All right, so this is England.
The main big one, England, that's where the Lib Dems did particularly well. Only place where the Greens got in, because that's where they stand. The Green Party of England. Reform UK, again, the only part where they got any seats, and also a bunch of independent candidates. So this is people like Jeremy Corbyn, who got kicked out of Labour and then stood as an independent. There are a bunch of other ones that did the same thing. You can also see that England, I'm covering it up slightly, but the number is 543. So England makes up a massive amount of the seats in Parliament, 433 out of the 650.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
also
where
quite
we were.
interesting how kind of tilted the balance is tilted towards England so hardcore. Like the other countries kind of don't have so much. I mean, this is kind of, I guess, typical to the monarchy, how things are organized, that England somehow is at the center of government, even though the whole country is much bigger than that. So
Well, it's to do with population. It's just based on population. Every constituency is about 60 to 80,000 people, average 70,000. So England has got 55 million people, and then Scotland has 7, Wales has 5-ish. London is like Wales and Scotland combined. London's population alone is 10 million. So that's already bigger than Scotland. So
I
it's just
see.
based on population. It's not
So it's not that unfair.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I mean, you could argue it's still unfair, but it's based in a fair way. It's not like they just get more because it's England. It's population.
hmm
So that's the English results, and then the Scottish results, which I'm just going to go away and cry for a moment, and then I'll come back.
Yeah, we don't have to linger on these if you want to move on.
But yeah, that's what happened in Scotland. So for context, the Scottish National Party, which again is my party, hands up bias, they were on 48 seats in 2019. Before that, they had a similar number. Before that, they had an even larger number. And now it has collapsed down to pretty much what the SNP vote has been up until about 2015, which is a massive shift. The Labour Party has regained a lot of the seats that they lost to the SNP after the independence referendum in 2014. The Liberal Democrats have done quite well in Scotland. They tend to do very well up in the north of Scotland. They do very well in the island areas because they like to focus a bit more there. And then the Conservatives, as we saw earlier, do very well in the borders and also in the northeast. And the reason for that is because it's a very affluent area. It's quite rural, and it's where the oil capital of Europe is.
That's
So
why you have this conservative chunk here.
Yeah. Although the very yellow bit just above that blot of blue, you see where there's a difference between the two.
I kind of don't.
So there's a bit where it should be blue, but at the very top it's turned yellow instead.
Yeah,
That-
here on the north, like coast, basically.
Yeah, that's where Douglas Ross's seat was, which he lost to the SNP.
Wait, Douglas
the Scottish
Ross
Conservative leader.
was
The Scottish Conservative leader who kicked out the other candidate so that he could stand. He lost his seat to the SNP, which is the most hilarious thing politically that could happen to him. A very pro-British Union person being kicked out by a Scottish nationalist. But that was the result in Scotland.
But did he not lose? I mean, this was the result of the election, not the result of him resigning because of the scandal.
No.
So he would have technically been out anyways. He just resigned as the leader of the Conservative Party as well.
There's a chance he could have gone out. I think it would depend on how well they would have campaigned on like oil and gas. I think if he'd campaigned really well on it, then he probably would have gotten votes for it. But I think also this area has been turning SNP. I think we won that area in the Scottish Parliament elections before. So that might be just a continuation of that trend that's somehow kept, even while everywhere else has stopped voting SNP. But that was Scotland, sad as it was for me.
Yeah, our condolences.
Wales was quite interesting because the Conservatives lost in Wales, they did quite well under Boris Johnson. They got one of their best results. They got one of the most seats that they got. They got the highest proportion of votes that they ever got. And then because of everything that's gone on and happened, those votes then swung back to Labour and to the Liberal Democrats, and they got completely wiped out.
Yeah, interesting.
And then the Northern Ireland one, which just is a lot happening.
Yeah, the very split up one.
Yeah, so Sinn Féin, Irish Republican Party, did very well. That's been a continuing trend because they also won the parliamentary elections in Northern Ireland itself. They just won those for the first time as well. So that's kind of a continuation of that trend. People are being basically fed up with corruption within the Democratic Unionist Party. Stormont, that's the one, Shark Dog Stormont, the assembly in Northern Ireland. Yeah, you got it right.
Is that the parliament, basically, or what is the Stormont?
That's the name of it, yeah, Stormont.
Oh.
I think the only thing that's really changed is this traditional unionist voice. That is a party that is not normally represented. As far as I can tell from what I've read, they had a pact with Reform UK. They're very aligned with them. They seem to be quite a right-wing party, and they are also, as the name suggests, they are pro-British Union with the rest of the UK.
And the Alliance Party is...
The Alliance Party is this. It's kind of a Liberal Democrats of Northern Ireland, but they don't take a position on whether Northern Ireland should be part of the Republic or Britain. They want to just get on with everyday politics and forget about it. They don't talk about stuff. Social Democratic Labour Party is the Labour Party in Northern Ireland, but unlike the other Labour parties in Scotland and Wales, they are actually pro-reunification. They want Ireland to be reunited into one country, as opposed to Labour in Wales or Scotland, who are pro-staying within the UK.
Interesting. But the sentiment in general in Northern Ireland seems to be very, anti-unionist at the moment, right?
Politically, it looks like that, but I think when you look at what people are actually saying, they're more voting Sinn Féin because Sinn Féin are a left-wing, they're a very left-wing party. But they've been toning down talk of reunification. They've been talking more about corruption in the DUP or wanting to get on with other things in politics. So it's difficult to say whether or not the mood is changing. I think within the younger generations, there's an idea of like people don't really care about whether you're British or Irish. So that kind of might mean that people are not too bothered about this sort of stuff. It's just the older generations who are more concerned with it.
Yeah, but then why is it that Sinn Féin doesn't want to actually participate in the British Parliament?
It's tradition. Their fundamental core belief is that the UK does not have sovereignty over Northern Ireland. They reject it completely out of principle. The idea that, one, we as Republicans would swear to a king, which you have to do if you want to be sworn in as a member of Parliament. You have to swear that oath of allegiance.
Right.
And also, they just do not recognise that the UK owns, as they would put it, Northern Ireland.
Yeah, that's a very colonialist statement, saying you own it rather than you are...
That's how they would put it. That's what Sinn Féin would say. The UK owns Northern Ireland. You've kept it. It should be with the rest of Ireland. That's why their party logo is the whole of Ireland united in one without any splits in it.
I see.
Whereas the Ulster Unionist Party has just the northern counties of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And that was basically what happened with the parties. That's the breakdown for the different countries of the UK. And then the different results came in. They were quite interesting. The first one that came in was Sunderland. Oh yeah, this. Okay, I should probably explain this guy. This guy is a politics legend, basically, Professor Curtis. He
Really?
does polling. He's a professor at the University of Strathclyde, so he really knows what he's talking about with political science. He gets brought in to the BBC. He invented politics. It's true, he did, Raddy. He actually did invent politics. This is Mr. Politics.
Oh, shit, it's like Mr. Nintendo.
Mr. Politics. He's best friends with Mr. Nintendo. I'm gonna start speaking like a bleb.
Yeah. I mean, if you tried harder, you could sound like Harry.
I'm not going to. I'm not gonna. I can do it off camera or off stream, but I'm definitely not doing it on the internet. I don't want to offend him.
That's fine.
But yeah, this guy is a big deal. I've met him once. It was very cool. He gets brought onto the BBC to basically talk about the exit poll. He gets brought on to say what methods did they use, how likely is it that the exit poll is going to be correct. And they have him on basically through the night. There's a bit of a running joke with political people where for as long as the election is on, John Curtis will not sleep. So you need to get the count done quickly because we cannot have him staying up for 3 days in a row just to talk to the BBC.
Yeah. He's got to take to keep sipping on that caffeine the whole time.
A lot of it, yeah. There's a running thing in politics as well that there is, in UK parliamentary stuff, there is one constituency that will always declare the results first, and that is Sunderland. Sunderland is quite small, and they're also very, very good at counting, which means that they always get their results done first. Usually Sunderland is kind of a good indicator for how the country might vote because it tends to swing between different things. So, for example, in the 2016 referendum, when we were all at the count, checking the ballots in our local area, and we were checking the news, when Sunderland came in, they were the second result to come in after Gibraltar, which is a territory in Spain that Britain owns, colonial stuff.
Ah, so you
When
also
Sunderland-
get Gibraltar to vote and stuff.
Yeah. So the first UK proper result was Sunderland. When they came out and said they voted for Brexit, that was the point where all of us who know our politics went, oh.
When your heart sank.
Yeah, we were like, oh, England is going to vote for Brexit. This is what's going to happen. Sunderland is like a swings area. If they're going to go for that, then that's it. We're done.
Did Gibraltar vote for Brexit too?
They didn't. They voted Remain. They were the largest Remain area. They voted 95% for Remain.
Wow.
Because obviously they're attached to Spain, so with free movement of people, they can just go between Spain and they can just go wherever they need to on the continent.
Makes sense. Those 5% are a bit special, though.
Shark dog.
Well, okay. Do we have?
I kind of touched on Jeremy Corbyn already. About actually, I didn't. Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn. He was one of the people who got kicked out of Labour allegedly for being.
Wait, I don't have a picture in here about him anymore, but he's.
I think I left him out of there. I just left Jeremy out because I'm terrible. Oh God, I just saw that slide.
Let's bring him back for now.
There's Jeremy. Yeah, former leader of the Labour Party. He stood as an independent after he got told that he can't stand for Labour. He stood quite late, so everybody said he's not going to win. He's left it too long. Turns out he did win his seat back. He beat the Labour Party candidate, and he did it with nearly exactly half of the total vote. So he got 49% of the vote share as an independent candidate, which is massively unheard of.
Pretty good for him, yeah.
Yeah. The thought behind it is that the 5 independent candidates, including Corbyn, who won England, is because of Labour's 1, not being left-wing enough for people, and 2, comments that had been made about Gaza earlier on in the year that basically put off a lot of the Muslim voting population in England. They tend to vote for the Labour Party. So they thought is that in Muslim areas they may be pushed for the Greens or the Liberal Democrats or independents like Corbyn, that sort of thing.
What with the Gaza, like Keir Starmer's position on it is that because he wrote they were confused comments about Gaza.
There was a problem in the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn with anti-Semitism. So because of that, Keir Starmer is trying to be very careful not to accidentally reignite that. But in doing so, his position on Gaza was not as strong as it should be for somebody who used to be a human rights lawyer. He used to be one of the human rights lawyers in the UK. He accidentally gave the impression that it was okay for Israel to withhold water and electricity from Gaza. He says that he didn't mean it. He misphrased something. I kind of believe that. I think he did, listening to the interview. But it wasn't a good look. It really started to make people doubt whether they wanted to vote for the Labour Party because of it. And they've also been very slow on things like calling for a ceasefire or recognition of Palestine as a state, because the UK doesn't currently. Stuff like that. That's something that's actually going to be voted on tonight. There are some Labour members who are trying to push for that to be debated in Parliament, which is going to cause a headache for him. So all of these issues have kind of...
Wait, what is going to be debated in Parliament?
Whether or not Gaza should be Palestine should be recognised as a country.
Oh, okay.
Basically. But that was what happened with Jeremy Corbyn and all of the independent candidates. And then Nigel Farage, he won terribly. He won. He's already gone. He's left. He's in America. He might be back. I think he's back now. But yeah, he went off. He got heckled as well. He did the victory speech a couple of days later, and he got interrupted like 7 times by 7 different people. He took it like he usually does. He was very proud. He stood there trying to give his speech, and he just sort of held a beer like he usually does, and just was like, I've got all day to do this. His usual attitude. As I mentioned before, Douglas Ross, he lost his seat to the SNP, which was very funny. Well, okay, from a biased point of view, it was very funny. And then we have this whole thing. There's a video that we could watch first, I think. Would give a slight bit of context.
The big beasts who lost their seats from the Tories? Or which one is it? Okay.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
All right.
So there were a lot of Conservative cabinet ministers who lost their job. Railways journey Michael Portillo. Yes, Shark Dog. I'm glad somebody pointed that out. It's completely irrelevant to the conversation, but yes, that is a guilty pleasure of mine.
I don't know what Railways journey is hinting at there.
I'll explain it in a second.
All right, then I'll.
He was a politician, Shark Dog. He was a cabinet minister.
Okay.
The former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has lost her seat, and this caps an appalling night.
Wait. I started playing over you. What were you saying?
No, I'm talking. I'm talking over you now. It's fine. Just ignore me and play the video. I'm sorry.
No worries.
The former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has lost her seat, and this caps an appalling night for the Conservatives.
No more Trussy.
To those disappointed at the result tonight, let me cheer you up. Democracy is never wrong.
May I begin by giving my warmest congratulations to Dan Norris and congratulate Sir Keir Starmer, who has led his party to what seems to be an historic victory. From the ashes of disaster grow the roses of success. So thank you very much to everybody.
Bye-bye, Grant Shapps. Bye-bye, Defence Secretary. You are no longer in the House of Commons.
What is crystal clear to me tonight is it's not so much that Labour won this election, but rather that the Conservatives have lost it.
To the many good, hard-working Conservative candidates who lost tonight, despite their tireless efforts, their local records of delivery, and their dedication to their communities, I am sorry.
I don't know why that guy looked like Andy Warhol. Okay, that's a lot of people. But who is this Portillo guy? Portillo. I don't know how you say his name.
So Michael Portillo, he was a cabinet minister under Margaret Thatcher and then her successor. He
Not
also, for Shark
Thatcher.
Dog, yeah, for Shark Dog, he is also a former politician now who does a lot of things where he rides around on trains in the UK, in Europe, and the United States, and does a TV program about it. And I quite enjoy it, despite the fact that he's a Conservative minister under Thatcher.
What does he
my
do on
guilty
these
pleasure.
train rides? Like, what does he present? Just like how trains work in different places?
So he goes to different places. He goes to the communities that were built up around when the railways were first invented. He has a little book that that I have on my bookshelf as well. I don't know how I'm being more of a nerd already talking about politics, but I also have the book it's called Bradshaw's Book, and it's basically a guy who went around the railways when they were first invented, and he talked about the communities. And so Michael Portillo goes around these places like 100 and 150 years later to see how they've changed. It's not important, but Shark Dog brought it up, and I'm really glad they did. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy, Michael Portillo, he was a cabinet minister, quite a big one. He lost his seat in 1997. 1997 was the big election when the Conservatives finally got kicked out of power after 30 years, and Tony Blair won what is Labour's greatest election victory, the one that Keir Starmer nearly overturned.
Ah, right.
Portillo losing his seat was the moment where everyone realised, oh my God, Labour are actually going to beat cabinet ministers and people who should not be losing their seats this easily. So now, whenever people lose their seat, big people who are in cabinet or just have very large majorities that aren't usually overturned, they refer to it as a Portillo moment because it basically foretells that there's going to be a massive change in government. Possibly the party that was in government is going to be out of government for like a few decades, basically.
Mm-hmm. I see, because I thought that Portillo was still involved in these elections, but this is just the just explaining the phrase basically.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those Portillo moments was this guy, Jonathan Ashworth. He was a member of the shadow cabinet for Labour when they were still in opposition. He lost his seat to one of those independent candidates, again, probably because of Gaza. That was a shock result that came about. So people would call that a Portillo moment as well, because it was unexpected.
Yeah, even though that's not telling of the way the Labour Party did.
Yeah, sometimes it can be constituency. Usually people say it when they're talking about the whole government, but sometimes it can just be one place. But that's a
Shark Dog is-
Portillo moment.
Oh, okay. Shark Dog is saying whether the biggest victory of the Labour was actually in 1945 under Adley. I don't know if this.
I'm confident that the charts I've looked at for Labour show that it was definitely Tony Blair, but also I can be wrong about that. So, you know.
Well, it's one of you two, because I wouldn't have a clue. What else do we have
that
here?
happened. The Liberal
Nick
Party,
Clegg.
they did quite well. Old Nick Clegg, yeah, miss him. They've done really very well considering the time that they've had in the last decade. So the Lib Dems, they've never been an especially big party. They're relatively recent. They did do quite well in 2010. This was when the Conservatives came back into power finally. they didn't have enough seats to form a majority, so they did a deal with the Liberal Democrats. One of the big promises that the Liberal Democrats had in the election was, we won't raise tuition fees for English students for university. The Conservatives had the opposite plan, and because of that, the Liberal Democrats basically had to agree to these tuition fee rises of £9,000 a year maximum.
Oh, so to still be part of the coalition, they were like, okay, fine, we'll do it your way. We'll increase the tuition fees.
Pretty much. And because of
Yikes.
that, at the next general election, they went from 57 seats down to just 8. So they went from having their best result to another one of their bad ones.
Mm.
And now they've managed to completely reverse that, where they've got even more than that. They've managed to get up to 72 or whatever the number was again.
So how did they make it in again after that big of a failure? Like, are they basically now again back on the whole promise of we're gonna reverse tuition fees, or like what's with Nick Clegg? Who's this guy? Also, welcome Raiders. We're talking about politics in the UK right now.
Yeah,
For
welcome
context.
readers. Welcome. Thank you. So the reason the Lib Dems have done so well is basically because they've been able to rebrand after Brexit. They've managed to rebrand as a party that supports closer ties with the European Union. They've been able to push themselves. When Jeremy Corbyn was in charge of the Labour Party, they were able to say that they were the more centrist, moderate voice in politics. They've kind of lost that under Keir Starmer. But what they've been able to do is to start targeting conservative areas that have just completely just fallen out with the Conservative Party. They think they're too right-wing or not capable of government. So the Liberal Democrats have been able to push on that. And there's been a lot of one of the reasons that the Conservatives, why Boris Johnson rather had to stand down. No, not Boris Johnson, just the Conservative Party in general, sorry, has had such a bad time is because they've also lost a lot of their seats. Because by-election after by-election, which is when an MP has to resign for whatever reason and they have to redo the election in that area. There's been a lot of those that have happened for Conservative MPs and a few Labour ones as well.
Wait.
And in those areas.
Because there's still maybe confusion that I have with like how the seats, like there are elections in the constituencies. And these are basically, you elect who is the representative of that constituency. That is what the by-election is.
Yes.
How is this different? Like, how often does this happen compared to when there is this parliament election? Because here you still elect basically who the representative of the constituency is.
I think the easy way to describe it is that the general election is 650 by-elections all happening at once, essentially.
Yeah.
Every single seat is being redone. With a by-election, you are just doing it for the one seat that MP, for whatever reason, whether they are being kicked out or they've done something where basically the public are able to say that we want to recall the MP, we don't think they should be the MP anymore, we want to elect a different one because they've broken the law or something like that.
Yeah, so you could still, like, right now there is a specific representative that won the general election for that constituency, but there could still be a recall on that and somebody else might pick up the seat instead.
That's precisely it. Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
That's that. Yeah. So a lot of those were happening because of Conservatives having to resign. In those areas, the Liberal Democrats tended to win those by-elections because they were very good at campaigning on
we're better than the Conservatives.
an alternative to them.
Yeah,
essentially.
I see.
And they were able to do that. So slowly they've been able to build up their... I'm just reading what chaotic...
Chaotic, please. Yeah, it helps. It helps, chaotic.
Yeah.
Also, what I did want to know how Les's stream was. Sorry that we're just kind of like brushing over chat because we're trying to also not derail.
Yeah, I'm keeping a little bit of a tab on chat. I think they're having a good time having little mini discussions. All very civil and very good.
Yeah, nobody to ban.
Nobody's to ban. I've not seen any bans. We got it all out of the way at the beginning, which is good.
Yeah, better like that, honestly, than stuff escalating.
But yeah, basically that's how the Lib Dems have managed to come back, and they are now the third party, which is very good.
Bard dropping the curbsy. I still read that before it got deleted, so
I didn't see it. So
good. Then let's pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, and then I guess after that, Scotland. Yeah.
Do you also want to go over this, or do we?
I can go over it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Oh, Mess, best of luck with your exams.
Oh yeah, good luck there.
Best of luck.
Yeah, God, I'm so happy I never have to take exams again.
Oh God, yeah, but positive thinking, all that jazz.
You'll get through it.
Yeah, basically what happened. Why did the SNP do badly in Scotland? A lot of issues, a lot of scandals. One of them involves the former chief executive of the party, allegedly involved in some financial frauds to do with party finances. There was some stuff about COVID-19 related WhatsApp messages that were being deleted for some reason to do with government policy. That caused a bit of an outrage.
That's so suspicious, whatever they were talking about in there, but
I think they've managed to get a backup of the messages since then that they've had. So it's sort of sorted, but also not really. But then there was also Nicola Sturgeon on the left there, one of the most popular politicians if not the popular politician in the UK for many, many years. She resigned after COVID. She felt that after 16 years in government, she was basically done. After that, there was a leadership election that got a little bit heated. Things were said that people maybe shouldn't have been saying. They then elected this guy, Hamza Yousaf. He ended a deal with the Green Party in Scotland prematurely. The Greens then voted no confidence in his government, which then meant he had to resign. And that then led to this man above you, Anka, John Swinney, taking over the party instead. And that happened just before the election. On top of that, the Labour Party just ran a very good campaign of saying, do you want the Tories out of office? Then vote for us and we'll get rid of the Tories. And people just went for that message. They liked the message of change on top of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
On top of all of that, Scottish independence has kind of become very difficult to deliver for the SNP. The SNP is the party of independence for Scotland. What's the SNP symbol, Chef?
It looks like a reversed cancer logo. You know, the breast cancer. It's probably not.
It does,
what it
but
is, but
it's meant to be a savoury pudding called a clootie dumpling, as far as I know. Or it could be a thistle, which is the national flower of Scotland. It'll be one of those two things. Nobody's really sure which one it is. I think at this point nobody knows.
Okay.
So we just pretend it's either one.
Let's see.
Bard, that's not what I said.
Bard just can't. Yeah, too bad. That's a lot of instability and kind of some corruption in there, and
there's a lot of stuff that's happened. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, independence is just something that doesn't look like it's deliverable at the moment, and because of that, people who support independence don't want to vote for an independence party that isn't delivering independence. They want to vote for a different party that is on the next slide, called the Alapa Party, or as I call them, ABLA, because they did a promotional thing once where they basically they mixed up the letters B and L.
Oh God, You clowns. Look at
So
you.
now I just call them ABLA. They're led by the former leader of the SNP, Alex Salmond, who now just really hates the SNP for personal reasons. So people are now voting for his party, or they'll vote for the Scottish Greens because they're pro-independence, or they'll just start voting for the Labour Party again because they feel that maybe they might not be pro-independence, but they can deliver certain things before we're independent. But on some Bard's question about does that kind of mess up independence, it kind of does, because you've got the main party that would be pushing for independence at a political level. However, the sort of grassroots campaign of independence is still quite big, and the polling hasn't dipped. It's still at 45% to 50%, which is what it's been at since the referendum in 2014. So it's not become less popular, but it's also not become more popular as it needs to be. If you're pro-independence like me and that's what you want.
Is it like, because how many referendums for the Scottish independence have there been? One, because I know that they were gonna try to push another one through, but that's not been working, basically, right?
Yeah, it's on the screen. It'll tell you basically Supreme Court says that the Parliament can't hold one itself, and the UK government won't allow there to be one. So basically, you can't do anything. People are not happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's happened in Scotland. That's why things have gone badly. Alleged corruption, polling just not looking very good in terms of changing leaders and stuff, and also just Labour were going to win the election anyway, so it didn't matter. But that was Scotland.
There's some stuff about Reform UK. Do we want to look at this?
We don't really have to. It basically just that the Reform UK party winning is like the biggest breakthrough the far right has had in the UK since 2014, when a Conservative MP defected to Nigel Farage's party at the time, and also when his party won the European elections, which then led to the Conservatives being worried, which led them to call an EU referendum, which led to Brexit, which, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And also Reform UK came further second in a lot of constituencies. So even though they've only won 5 seats or 7 seats, 5 seats, they have done very well, at least, of beating the main parties in constituencies.
Yeah, I did see that there was a higher percentage, technically, of people who voted for them.
Yeah. Greens in England, they had a very good night. It went really well for them, quadrupling their entire vote share. There's not really a lot more to say about it, other than, again, much like the Liberal Democrats and the independent candidates, they were able to put themselves forward as the left-wing alternative to Labour, maybe being a bit more centrist. So they were able to pick up on those left-wing voters, or people who weren't happy about Gaza, or maybe weren't happy about other social issues. They were able to push that. Wales, I think we touched on that a bit already. We also touched on Sinn Féin doing well in Northern Ireland, and also why they don't take their seats up, because they don't believe that Britain should be in charge or have authority over Northern Ireland, that sort of thing.
I see. And then there's more representation.
Yeah, this is all the good news that has happened. So 40% identify as women. That's the most that there's been in Parliament. 10% are openly LGBTQIA. That's the largest amount of representatives in any parliament in the world.
That's
and I had to check.
awesome.
That includes the Scottish Parliament. I had to double check that. But yeah, of any parliament in the world, 10%. 14% came from black and minority ethnic groups. 60% were educated at state schools, so schools that are not private. They're not, you don't pay a fee for them. They're paid for by the state. And also 10 MPs, which is 1.5% of the total, they're under the age of 30 years old. So
You should have written under, but whatever. The wrong sign.
Is that the wrong way around? Oh,
Yeah.
for God's sakes. I did wonder why it looked a bit wrong. I just thought
yeah.
it was because I was using a symbol. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
I was
You don't have to draw
confused.
attention
I'll
to
just
it.
I'll just hide it again under your picture. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, but then at least you do have like that. This is nice news. It's a parliament of children. Oh no. Okay, and there's other stuff that happened basically next from
Yeah, so this
since
is
the
all of the
elections.
this is all the big announcements that happened. So day one, the Rwanda scheme, the deportation plan for asylum seekers and people seeking asylum to have them processed, not in the UK. That's dead and buried. I think it was either yesterday or today, the new Home Secretary announced that the plan cost £700 million. Now, remember that nobody was actually sent to Rwanda. All the flights couldn't take off because of legal issues. So we've spent apparently £700 million of taxpayers' money for nothing.
Just like
So that
preparing the camps and hotels and wherever these people were going to be taken.
Yeah, so that happened. Keir Starmer came up to Scotland second day, which honestly, considering that the last two prime ministers didn't bother coming to Scotland, is a good sign. Honestly, I'll give him credit for that. He did come up to Scotland to meet with the First Minister up here. He's been to Wales and Northern Ireland as well. A wind farm ban was scrapped by the Finance Minister. That was good. Aid to Palestine for the UN agencies that work there. That's been reinstated. That's very good news. That's the UN agency that was accused by Israel of having staff that were helping Hamas, which it turns out might not have been true. So that's good. That's been reinstated. The one thing that's happened that's been announced that's not so good is the new health secretary, who is basically backing a ban by the Conservatives on puberty blockers for young trans people.
Oh,
He's going to
that's too
continue
bad.
with that. He's going to continue with that. That's another thing that people are not happy with. That might have to be changed, but for now, they're keeping with that. So there's some good stuff in there, and a couple of very not great things.
West Streeting. That's the name of the health secretary.
Yeah. Sorry, Sam Bard. So Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister. Wes Streeting is the Health Secretary.
Has Keir Starmer also made transphobic statements, or?
I don't know if I could go that far. I know that he's maybe been open to listening to people like J.K. Rowling. It's difficult to. I don't know if I personally can use. Well, actually, yeah, Sam Bard's. Yeah, I think I've seen him make comments like that. So actually, yeah.
Yeah, that's not great then.
Yeah. And then I think the next slide is basically just showing everyone who's in cabinet, all these
Yeah.
people. Housing minister doesn't matter. That's fine. Yeah. These are all the people that have taken over. These are all the new people.
Yep, lots of people.
Lots of people.
What's with this?
These are a couple of interesting ones. So these three people are not members of parliament. They are members of the House of Lords. So to be in the government, you can either be an MP or you can be a member of the House of Lords. These three people were appointed to the House of Lords specifically.
Oh, wait a second, because we're getting a big old raid from Melon.
Melon.
Maybe you need to take a moment to also get Melon's opinion. No, I don't know if he's gonna give an opinion on. Wait, is Melon actually from Ireland or from Northern Ireland? Because now I'm
go back to the Northern Ireland slides and we'll get his opinion on stuff. That's a joke, Melon. It's fine.
Melon is Irish, but from which part? Because like it's this split of Ireland that's confusing.
Yeah.
But I
Thanks for
guess
the raid, Melon.
yeah, thank you for coming in. Hello, Juicy Aurelia. Clegane. Yeah, we've been just talking about how the UK general elections went, what kind of led up to that, what's kind of the aftermath, like what people started doing. Yeah, we were on this slide here. It's about these 3 people from the House of Lords, and I guess I'm waiting to see in which way they're relevant now, so you can continue, I guess.
Yeah, thank you again for the raid, Melon. If you're still here, if you've already gone off, good to see you. Basically, these 3 people. So yeah, they've been appointed to the House of Lords. Patrick Vallance, he used to be the chief medical officer. So he was in charge of a lot of the medical stuff in England and the rest of the UK. He's been appointed to science, which obviously somebody who's worked in medical stuff, very good appointment to have for science, especially with innovation and technology in the medical field. That's a good appointment. Richard Hermer for Attorney General. Again, he is a human rights lawyer, so a pretty good appointment. James Timpson was the surprise one. This guy's an entrepreneur, but he's been appointed to prisons. And the reason for that is because he employs a lot of former prisoners in his businesses that he has. And he's also very outspoken on prison reform, making sure that you're not putting people in prison who could be going through different like community service things, or basically shifting the focus from punishment to rehabilitation of prisoners. That's his whole ethos. So again, a surprising, but actually on the face of it, a very good appointment, these 3 people. Whether you agree with people from the unelected House of Lords sitting in government, regardless, they are actually quite sound appointments.
But wait, so these guys are no longer in the House of Lords, now they're part of the House of Commons, or?
So they are now, so they've been appointed to the House of Lords specifically so that they can sit in the government. Because to be in the government, you must be a member of the Commons or a member of the Lords.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the US where you can basically, Joe Biden or I suppose Kamala Harris now would be able to basically just say, you're very good with science stuff, you're not elected to anything, but you're good at science, you will be my science secretary. Whereas in the UK system, you need to be some kind of official in government.
I see. So it's not so much up to, I don't know, like the president or whoever.
Yeah.
It's still...
They have to be accountable in some way to Parliament.
But then was it through vote that they were appointed?
No, the Prime Minister gets to appoint them.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you wanted to, in a roundabout way, you could say the Prime Minister was elected, therefore, in an indirect way, they're elected in the same way that you don't elect a Prime Minister, you elect a party, the leader of the party becomes the Prime Minister. If you use that logic, it makes sense. If you prefer a more direct way of electing people, you disagree with that. But that's sort of the logic. That in some way they are accountable. Not to defend it, but just explaining basically how it works. Whether you think it's archaic or not is a personal decision.
I would have a hard time making up my mind about that right now because, I mean, there's on one hand, you want people to democratically vote as much as possible. On the other, it does lessen the burden on the population of voting so in such granular ways. But yeah, it's I'm not sure what's better.
Yeah. But yeah, these are, as far as I can tell, they're pretty good appointments. The next one is one that's a bit more controversial.
This is the Home Secretary.
So former Home Secretary, they're now the Minister for Skills and something else. They're in the Department of Education now.
What is a Minister for Skills?
Stuff like employment.
Ah, okay. It just has such a funny... The ministry has such a funny name.
Yeah. It's got a much longer name, but I just didn't want to type it all out. Jackie Smith's another member of the House of Lords. She's the Baroness for Malvern, which I presume is somewhere in England. She's been brought back in because she's quite friendly with Keir Starmer, and obviously he'd want to appoint people that he knows that he's had experience with. She's been a former minister under Tony Blair, so she knows what she's doing. The slight issue with her is that she was caught up in the big 2009. There was a big expenses scandal of MPs claiming for things that they shouldn't be. She was found claiming for adult films that her
Huh?
husband watched.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. Yep.
That is
Um,
so weird. Like, first of all, how much are you even gonna claim expense for these films? Like, how much was he even spending on this?
I haven't checked the figure, but it's probably nowhere near as bad as some of the other ones. One person had claimed for a duck pond. So,
Oh, for fuck's sake.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that she did was that she basically got caught saying that her primary home was, in fact, her sister's house. She didn't disclose that she had a second house and that she was claiming allowances on that second house that was actually somebody else's house.
I mean, for
basically.
this, you would have to know, maybe to have a better explanation for what is an allowed expense. Like, it's basically everything that allows the ministers to do their work, right? So, or is
It
it
would be
also
for, journeys, ministerial car journeys. It would be for stationery, hiring new staff, stuff like that.
but then also for housing?
There's a specific one, I believe, for housing, because obviously if you're an MP and you live, because the rail network in the UK is not great, if you live in the very north of England and you don't want to spend every week traveling like the 5 hours to get down to Parliament to then go up again, and also your train might be delayed or cancelled, you may choose to have a second home in London. But you have to make sure that you disclose that. This was a house that she had not properly disclosed and claimed was her house.
But it was
So
actually
she was
her
able to put
sister's,
allowances.
or
Yes.
like shared with her sister.
Yes.
I see. Brazzers is an essential good. Hey, it's not like it was her husband using it too, it's but yeah, that's kind of funny.
I didn't realize it was for that. I knew she'd been caught up in the expenses scandal because I think basically every MP had. I didn't quite realize it was that. So
I mean, I don't like, it doesn't matter so much what it was for, except that it's kind of funny. It's rather that she did kind of get a lot of allowances for stuff she shouldn't have. So
yeah. And then
But yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what the next slide is, so it'll have to be a mystery. Oh, the fun, yeah. Just very quickly. So obviously
We're
Rishi
back in
Sunak's
1922.
back in 1922, yep. We gotta go back, Marty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so another Conservative Party leadership election. This is the committee that decides it. These people are all the Conservative MPs. They sit around and they decide things in what is called the 1922 committee. Presumably it was created in 1922. Their job is to choose a new candidate or candidates to go forward for the leadership election. The issue that they're having right now is that the first meeting they had, they were meant to be electing who would be in charge of this committee. Apparently, a lot of high-profile MPs were unable to vote because they didn't turn up to the meeting on time, except they had turned up to the meeting on time. It's just that the meeting had closed early and nobody had told them.
Oops.
Yeah. So it's not going well so far. But apparently tomorrow is when they're going to start doing the election stuff. So
But this is only about the just electing the leadership of their party, and they just cannot even Like the problem is that they cannot even sort themselves out to get everybody in on time to vote on who
Yeah.
the committee is. So, and the committee then would do the
Choosing of
election.
people, yeah.
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 Okay.
I'm sure they've figured that out by now. This was quite a few days ago.
Hopefully.
Then the big thing that's come up, the King's speech. This is when the King and Queen Consort, Charles and Camilla, they get brought before the House of Lords, which is historically meant to represent the monarchy, but now it is the upper chamber. He sits in his very decadent chair in the House of Lords. He then gets given bits of paper that basically have the government's agenda for the next year.
Do you think that chair is comfy? Because it doesn't look very comfy.
It's probably got a comfy cushion under it. It only gets used like once a year. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that good. He's only there for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Also, I knew that somebody was gonna say something about the royal rod.
Yeah, the royal rod. There we are. Yeah, this person, Sarah Clark, her job is basically, she's kind of the bouncer of the House of Lords. Her job is to make sure that people aren't being rowdy, and if they are rowdy, her job is to escort them out. Her other job is to go to the House of Commons, bang on the door. They then open the door, they then slam it in her face, then let her in, basically to say that the monarchy is not above the Commons. It's a symbolic thing. It's basically to say we're shutting the door on you and then we will allow you in, kind of thing. It's odd.
So it's kind of funny because it's just like purely symbolic. It's not like she's actually gonna need to chase people out with the stick.
Yeah, I mean, she probably could if she needed to, but yeah, she then goes into the Commons and says, "You're required," and the House of Lords. All of the MPs then walk out. They kind of walk out with their counterparts. So Keir Starmer's with Rishi Sunak, who's still the leader of the Conservatives for now. So they'll walk out together. Then the Deputy Prime Minister and the Shadow Deputy Prime Minister, or no, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition will walk out. Health Secretary, Shadow Health Secretary, they'll kind of walk out together and then go to the House of Lords and they'll stand there while the King reads out the speech.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go off again. And there was about 40 things that were going to be announced.
Oh wait,
this
is not really applicable?
Yeah, we can just have it up there just for something. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff put in. Tax and spending change. Yep.
Are these like upcoming changes, basically, like what is planned the agenda for the 24-25 Parliament?
Yeah, so these are bills that will be introduced. They might not all get passed next year, but they'll be introduced, they'll be debated on. Sandbard, they are the Sergeant at Arms. That is basically their thing. I think they're the Sergeant at Arms for the House of Lords. I'm just talking to Sandbard here. Sorry, I'm being rude. Because Sandbard will be the only one who gets that.
That's fine. It's kind of how... I mean, that's how you interact with chat sometimes. It's just one person.
Yeah. Basically, Sandbard, we have two Sergeant at Arms. We have one for the House of Lords and one for the House of Commons. She's the one for the House of Lords.
You're talking about the Black Rod?
Yeah. And then the House of Lords one, the House of Commons one does have the ceremonial mace for the House of Commons.
Oh.
But anyway, the bills that were introduced, I'm not going to talk about all 40 of them because I just wasn't interested by some of them anyway. But the first big one is that tax and spending changes will need to be independently assessed, regardless of whether they're in a budget or whether they're just little changes. Basically, to try and stop what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did with their mini budget that tanked the economy. They're trying to stop that ever happening again.
Fair enough.
They're going to ban employment practices that are exploitative. So, like 0-hour contracts, where you basically get told you don't get given a set number of hours that you work, and they can just call you in at any time to do work, which means that you might be working 30 hours one week, and then 2 hours the next week. They're going to ban that, apparently, and they're going to enhance a bunch of other laws as well.
Mm-hmm.
Full right to equal pay regardless of your race or ethnicity. There is technically an equal pay law, but this one will specifically reference about race and ethnicity because the pay gap for race and ethnicity has been getting worse. More powers for local areas in England, including the power to take control of local bus services, which I think is one that has been very specifically chosen because the Labour mayors in certain areas have been doing that, and people have just liked it. So they've decided to make it easier everywhere else.
Our bus is really bad otherwise.
A lot of them are private companies, and a lot of them just underinvest, or they're owned by other countries. Like the companies are state-owned sort of thing. Rail franchising is a big one in the UK. Like we said earlier, they're just basically they were given to different private companies rather than just one overall public company. Different countries, like the Netherlands in particular, will buy up a rail franchise for one part of England, and then other parts of England will have different ones. You have to buy different rail tickets, and you have to go through different apps and stuff. So they want to get rid of that, and they want to go back to Great British Railways, eventually bring it back to public ownership, except in Scotland, because we renationalised everything in 2022.
You have the ScotRail.
ScotRail, which was previously owned by the Dutch. Great British Energy, that's going to be a big one. A publicly owned renewable energy company. That's going to be in Scotland. They haven't decided where yet. I'm guessing it's Aberdeen. Slight issue with it is confusion about what it actually is, because Keir Starmer said during the campaign that it would be an investment arm of the Department of Energy. So it was going to be responsible for investment in renewable energy companies and stuff like that, rather than being an actual energy company that people could sign up to get their energy from. So there's some details that need to be worked out there about what precisely it will be.
And this would be good to clarify, because otherwise, if it's just an investment firm, that doesn't solve the issue of like publicly owned energy companies.
Yeah.
Because the investment could still go to whichever private company owns the infrastructure.
Yeah. Raddy, why does it need a set location? Some government agencies in the UK are set different places. So, for example, they could decide to move the Department for Energy. They could move the renewable section of it up to Aberdeen, where all the oil and gas is, where a lot of the renewable energy build-ups are happening. They could also choose to have it in, because if it's in Scotland, they could choose to base it in Edinburgh, because that's where the Scotland office, the Scottish arm of the UK government, is based. So that's basically why, if it's an investment company, they could still have it in Scotland. They could just change the location of where it operates. Improving water quality, that's a big one. There's been a lot of issues with, again, private companies that own the water systems in England, basically not investing in the ways that they should be, which has been causing pollution to get into the waters. So they want to improve water quality and the powers that water regulators have to basically fine these companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sewage
spills. Yeah, quote unquote. The rather, yeah, pretty much.
I love
it's like the Seine in Paris or whatever it is. Ahead of the Olympics, it's fine. You can swim in it. It's perfectly safe.
Yeah.
The next one's actually a good one. So there's currently private schools in the UK don't have to pay sales tax. So basically, if you're paying for private school fees, you're not also having to pay a tax charge on it as well, because they're exempt from it. Labour are planning to get rid of that. So you would have to pay a tax on it, which they're saying could fund an extra 6,500 teachers for state schools, which is a good policy. I agree with that completely.
Is there a VAT exemption on public schools?
I don't think they do, because VAT is basically added to it if it's a luxury, which some things are classed as a luxury, which shouldn't be, like feminine hygiene products. That's a whole other argument. But basically, VAT is on commodities and goods, so public schools wouldn't count as that because they're a publicly owned thing.
Yeah, but they had also extended the exemption to private schools, which now they're revoking.
Yes. Basically, because the private schools tend, if you're a conservative especially, you would tend to go to a private school.
Biscuits are a luxury. That's outrageous. I don't know. I mean, I don't think, like, I'm not sure what goods, for example, in Germany are actually taxed or like exempt from VAT. There are some that are taxed at the lower rate, like train tickets and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
there's still more.
Oh, really? Train tickets? That's interesting.
Yeah, like you have a 7% VAT rate on those because the normal rate is usually 19%.
Oh, wow.
I think I don't know the by heart, so I don't want to just like say stuff, but there's definitely some stuff that is taxed lower, but stuff that is exempt from VAT, that's very rare. I don't know. I guess I'm not aware if you actually pay VAT on tuition fees. Probably not. If you're like in public schools and in universities.
Yeah.
Definitely tax my biscuits though. But yeah, so that's good for getting more tax money to fund more like more teachers' salaries.
Yeah, if it goes forward, which I think they're going to, they've been very vocal about it during the campaign, so I think that'll definitely happen.
Yeah, it's like Shark Dog says the essentials are 6%, I guess, in the Netherlands, and non-essentials 19%. Yeah, I just like, I guess it's like, I guess most food is probably taxed at 7%, but I don't know. I don't know because now actually I guess like if it's non-essential food, it probably still isn't. That's something for another time.
That's interesting though. Yeah, that's interesting. And what Clegane is saying about Norwegian
They tax
flight taxes as well.
tickets because of the pollution from air travel. I mean, I assume they do the same in Germany. All food is taxed at 15% and other goods are taxed at 25. 25, wow, big one.
Yeah, the Nordic countries and their high taxes. It's crazy. But they get stuff for it, so yeah. They're happier, apparently, according to the statistics. So must be something okay with that, I guess, maybe.
I mean, a better social safety net.
Yeah. That's something that we're going to talk about in a second. Yeah. They're also going to do a thing that they were going to do in New Zealand and then they scrapped it, which is increasing the age that you buy cigarettes at. So basically, for I believe it's every year, they add an extra year onto the cap for what you're allowed to buy. So if you're 18 now, they will then lower it. I'm trying to think how you describe it. Basically, the more generations that are born, the higher the age limit goes for buying cigarettes, to the point where basically nobody will be able to buy them.
I'm
Basically,
cool with that.
it's kind of a roundabout way of just banning them. And also, they're going to put limits on sale and marketing of vapes because they're becoming very popular with young people and people who should not be legally allowed to buy them, which is becoming an issue, especially with like the flavored versions.
Yeah, because in the end, those are also not much better for your health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another of the good policies, banning conversion therapy practices, which is basically the methods that are used by certain therapists to try to make people not gay or not trans.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
Terrible
so they're
stuff.
planning to ban that. That's a very good policy. I'm glad that they're going through with that. As far as I can tell, they're including trans conversion therapy in that as well. which is good because there was some discussions about whether or not that would happen. As far as they've said so far, it's any kind of conversion therapy, which is good. Another good one is a Council of Nations and Regions, which is going to bring together the Prime Minister, the First Minister of Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, the mayors and the big people in local government in England, basically together to regularly chat about what the UK government can do to help the other regions of the UK, which is fantastic because for the last few years there's not really been that sort of discussion. It's been very hostile. And then House of Lords reforms. Originally, the plan from Labour was to get rid of the House of Lords, which Labour have been promising basically since the party was created, which was well over 100 years ago now. Instead, what they've said for now is that they're going to stop hereditary peers. So these are members of the House of Lords who are a member because their father was a member and their father before them, they basically inherited their title. They're going to ban that, which will get rid of well over 100 members automatically.
I see. Sorry, I was just thinking of what Kerek is saying because I guess it's still on the topic of banning stuff like tobacco or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Because in a regard, it's a ban or something being criminalized or whatever is also kind of not a great way to deal with it because you just it becomes something of that the black market will then take care of.
I think it helps that in the UK there's also a culture of it's not been cool to smoke for the last few years. The issue will be making sure that young people don't think that vaping is cool.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that can be done if we manage to do it with smoking over 20, 30 years.
Like that's
can
really
probably-
important, having the cultural shift.
Yeah. I think we'll be able to do that. And that's basically all of the big policies that were put in the King's Speech. The ones that were kind of missing from it were the first really big one, which is being debated on right now, as far as I know. I'm fairly certain right now they're debating it, is getting rid of the 2-child benefit cap, which is basically, in the UK, you can claim additional support financially for children that you have. You know, if you're on a lower income, you can get extra help. The Conservatives brought in a policy where you can only get support for 2 children, and any other children after those first 2 children, you cannot claim any sort of financial help from the government for. So if you were to say have 2 children of your own and then a family member for whatever reason needed you to take over guardianship, you wouldn't be able to claim for that for a child, even though you weren't expecting it. It's completely thrown your household budget off. You cannot claim support from the government for that.
Yeah, that's
that is a
very
policy.
rough.
That's a policy that the Labour Party are not currently planning to get rid of yet, because they say that it cannot be afforded yet. So that policy is going to be staying in basically until they believe the economic situation means that they could spend the £3 billion or so that they'd be spending every year on it. There is going to be a massive rebellion, I think, over it from a lot of the Labour MPs who are not in the government. From what I've read, the SNP, my party, has put in an amendment to this programme for government that Labour has to basically say we want to get rid of the 2-child cap. That has now been accepted by the Speaker, which means that it will be debated and voted on tonight. It's probably going to be debated and voted on in the next hour or so. So basically we're going to have to see whether or not Labour are going to change their mind at the last minute, or if they're going to continue going ahead with not scrapping it, but a lot of the members of their party vote against the government to scrap it. That could happen tonight, which would be a bit embarrassing for the first big vote that the government has.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if we can do a live update on that, but would be interesting to know
Other stuff that's happening, there wasn't any talk about if there'll be extra powers given to the Scottish or the Welsh or the Northern Irish parliaments. There was nothing in there yet about that. Lowering the voting age for the UK elections to 16 years old and older. That wasn't in there. They have promised that they're going to do it, but it just won't be happening this year. Public spending, there wasn't really anything in the King's speech about what money they're going to be spending on the NHS, on schools, all this sort of thing. There's nothing in it. And a rent cap for private renters in England. There's a rent cap currently in Scotland. There's not one in England, and that is meant to be something that Labour are going to bring forward. They've not seemed to have done it for this year. So it might be like the two-child benefit cap, where they have to wait and see how the finances are, and then later down the line they might do it.
What is a rent cap in this case? Like, it's just a cap on how much somebody can get paid as far as rent is concerned?
It would basically stop landlords from overcharging people for their rent, so they wouldn't be able to charge someone, say, £100. I don't know why I'm being so low with that. £500.
Yeah, I asked because I got confused in my brain, not because this is unclear. Actually, because in German, I've started to mix up rent and Rente, which means pension.
Oh, right.
It can
I
be
did
so
not know
confusing
that.
sometimes. No,
Yeah.
like obviously.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the money that you would spend to live in your house. Yeah. That.
Yeah, I wish they would also do that in Germany and some big cities and stuff, but
Yeah. So that's the stuff that should maybe have been in there but haven't been done.
Mhm.
And then I suppose lastly to talk about is the sort of stuff that's what is being brought forward, but what are the issues that Keir Starmer is going to face going forward? What are Labour's big issues they've got to overcome? The first obvious one is the economy and the cost of living. That's not changed. People are still suffering the economic consequences of, well, capitalism in general, if we're being political about it, but also the war in Ukraine. That's still having an effect on inflation. We also have what just happened with the Liz Truss mini budget, which crashed the economy. People are dealing with that. On top of that, people haven't had their minimum wage increased with inflation. It's been pretty below inflation, which means that people are earning thousands less than they should really be earning if it had been kept up with. Labour are going to have to eventually figure out what's going to happen with public spending, because they're planning to keep to some of the rules that Rishi Sunak had set out for the finances. But according to one of the big government think tanks, they're organizations that look at government stuff, they're saying that if they do that, if they don't raise taxes or if they don't cut stuff, there's going to be £18 billion in their finances that are missing. And that money's got to be found from somewhere. So whether it's tax risers, whether they're borrowing money, or whether they're going to be cutting existing services, they've got to figure that out. Energy prices is another big one. Whether GB Energy Great British Energy will be able to help sort that. Hopefully, we'll see. Green transition and climate change is a big one. What they're going to do about the North Sea oil and gas sector up in Aberdeen and Scotland. All those workers that currently work in the oil and gas sector, they've got to be moved on to a new greener energy transition. Otherwise, it will be like in the 1980s and when Margaret Thatcher closed all the coal mines and people were just left with nothing. They've got to somehow deal with that. Immigration and asylum, that's one that is a perceived issue. Obviously, people voting for parties like Reform UK, people who still vote Conservative, who are concerned about immigration. From a Scottish perspective, the opposite problem is that we have a small population that is getting smaller. and is getting older. We need more people to come in from other countries to help bolster our workforce, to help public services such as the NHS. A lot of NHS workers across the UK come from other countries.
Yeah, that's the thing with anti-immigration sentiments. You folks seem to not realize just how reliant they are on external workforce. And Germany is also very aging, the population. I think that like they also have this problem of German families don't have children enough, and the population keeps aging. Obviously, there's
And of
also
course-
this right-wing sentiment of anti-immigration and stuff.
Yeah. And of course, policies like the 2-child benefit cap means that people are not wanting to have more children
Of course,
because
yeah.
they feel like they can't afford it. So that's why we need more people to be living in Scotland, particularly in the north of Scotland and the Highlands, where it's already a dwindling population because of historical reasons. So that's going to be an issue that Keir Starmer is going to have to decide whether he's going to try and deal with Reform UK and the Conservatives by going harder on immigration, or whether he's going to take a more, what I would call a sensible approach. The situation in Northern Ireland, I think, in terms of nationalist Republican parties gaining popularity, I don't think it's the biggest priority for him. But I think that at some point there's going to have to be some discussion about, do we have to start planning for some kind of reunification referendum? Maybe in 10, 15, 20 years' time. There needs to be some planning done on that. Culture wars, that's the big thing that all Western democracies seem to be dealing with right now. Trying to deal with whether it's celebrities or just very rich people or right-wing American organizations that started moving into the UK and funding different campaigns, particularly on trans youth. And then another of the really big ones to do with social security is the WASPy campaign, which is to do with women whose pensions have been they're not getting their pensions at the time when they should because there were changes to legislation. They've now spent 10 years campaigning to have that changed.
Why
There's
women
been-
specifically? Why were they affected on receiving their pensions?
Women retire at a different age than men. in the
Yeah.
UK. So they should so they should really be getting their pensions earlier, but because of changes in legislation, people that were born in one specific time period are not getting their pensions until later. And because of that, they're having to work for longer, or they've basically planned their whole lives to stop working, and now they're having to find ways to work or to get an income of some kind. That's something that Keir Starmer has said that he's going to fix, but there's not been any concrete plans for how he's going to do that. So that has to be sorted. Those are the big issues that he's going to have to deal with.
I see.
And that's kind of where we are today. You did say about the updates. I did put here in the bottom corner this video here. That is the actual live feed of probably what's going on right now.
Should I go over there?
Yeah, we could see what's happening. I don't know if it's a lot that's going on.
Just very loud chattering.
So if they're gathered like this and chattering, that means there's probably a vote going on right now. Because earlier when I was watching, because of course I've been watching this all day, there was a lot of people just not really there. There was only a few people there. If there's a lot of people like this here now, and they're all wandering around like this, that means that they've just been to vote. And the reason they're all standing up is because in the UK parliamentary system, if you want to vote on something, you physically have to go into a room and be counted to vote. Hold on, there's a picture that I could put into the Canva. that would show what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so all these people are going around to drop their votes.
Yeah. I'll quickly...
Yeah, so this is the vote for the 2-child benefit cap. Yeah.
It might be. I'm not sure which vote this would be.
I mean, this is the title of the video at least. But it hints at scrapping. It's not clear if that's what they're voting currently.
Yeah. I think if you refresh the Canva, I've added a slide before the last slide.
Oh, it actually shows up without refreshing. This one.
Oh, that's good.
I'm gonna turn off the audio from that video because there's nothing actually being said.
So this is how they vote. So this middle bit here obviously is the chamber. To then vote, you have to physically walk out and either stand in the aye lobby or the no lobby.
Oh.
And then count, and then somebody will count them. Now remember, there's about 600 people at any time that could be voting. Sometimes it's not every member of parliament. Sometimes people will they'll do an agreement where I can't make the vote, you also don't vote, and we'll cancel each other out. People do that a lot of the time. So it won't always be 600 and odd people voting. But it's still a lot of people. This is why voting in the UK Parliament takes about 16 minutes sometimes to vote.
God, that's chaotic. Like, couldn't they just have like ballots or something?
They could do something like that. They could do electronically, but they choose not to.
Electronically, yeah.
Yeah, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Parliament do electronic, and it's done in like a minute. But imagine, like, for example, during Brexit, when there was a lot of stuff having to be passed and a lot of changes being made. Imagine that every single vote, if people disagreed, basically you have to shout yes, no, and if it's obvious that no or yes are louder, you can just say, okay, yeah, that's passed because they were louder. If you can't distinguish that, you then have to say, okay, we're going to have a vote on it properly then. And imagine you're having to do that like 10 times.
Oh, God.
And you're having to go out and do it. And sometimes you might be in your office, which is in a different building, and you then have to run into this building to vote.
Yeah, that's very stupid. Can we just move into the internet age already?
This is how it works.
Yeah, I see.
This is also why they're voting at like 7 o'clock at night, whereas like most other parliaments would be closed at like 5 or 6 in the evening.
Yeah, curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still going. Still going.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it just to see, because it'll be interesting for me at least to see what is happening. But there is one last video on there, I think.
Is it in the...
It should be at the very bottom of the document.
No, it's in the document, not in the
document.
slides.
Yeah, sorry.
The anti-monarchist MPs protesting the oath to King Charles as they're sworn in.
We can watch that for a bit of comedy. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but yeah, if you want to become a member of parliament, you have to swear your oath to the king. You can do it in 2 ways. You can either choose to do it in a religious way, where you say, I swear by God that I will be faithful to the king, so help me God. Or you can choose to do an affirmation where you say, I will be loyal to the king. If you're anti-monarchy, they tend to do a thing where they either cross their fingers behind their backs, or they'll do what this lot do, and they'll say something else before they say it. All right, I've said that.
You're gonna say something that is not... because this is why it says here, my true allegiance is to the people of Derry or whatever, because they want to override the swearing to the monarch.
Yeah. 1 second, quickly, 1 second. I'm just looking at the vote, and they've just announced what the vote is, so I'm just checking what it was for. Because it would be funny if it was the 2-child thing after all this.
I'm unmuting.
The noes were 363,
So the noes have it, unlocked. I call Christine Jardine to move Amendment K.
Oh god, right, it'll be
formally.
none of these ones
Formally
because yeah, we don't have to
The
watch this.
question is that
They are
Amendment
well
K
past
be
it
led.
now. I didn't even know there was an amendment K.
I'm
'cause
confused.
they do the amendments alphabetically, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So apparently there's a K amendment now that I didn't even know existed. So this is just going to go on all evening then.
So they're voting
yeah.
on a bunch of things on the agenda.
So this is them getting up to vote now. So they'll have done the little bit where they say, as many of that opinion say aye, no, no. And then division, clear the lobbies, which means that any member of staff or anyone who's in the way just has to walk out of the way so that all 600 of this lot can walk in there.
Oh god, pain. Yeah, why can't they just push a button? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
silly, but so they're voting, like, did they actually already vote on the two-child benefit thing, or what are they voting? Because
They
you're
might have.
saying up to K, like this is the K amendment. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff they're voting.
I'm actually, if you're okay with that, I'm going to quickly check the news and see whether they've said.
Yeah, go for it.
Because all the news channels tend to like do a live coverage of this.
In Canada, you gotta remain in the house during any voting, unless voting remotely.
Oh, yep. I think it was literally just that one there. So yeah, it was. So 103 people voted to scrap it, which means that a lot of the Liberal Democrats, the SNP, the Greens, Plaid Cymru, the Irish ones, and a lot of Labour people must have voted to get rid of the two-child cap, because 103 is a lot more than there should be.
But does that mean that it's actually getting scrapped? Because that's still...
Nope. 363 voted against it. So that's definitely at least 60 Labour people who didn't vote for whatever reason. So it nearly happened, because having that many people vote against it is still pretty bad for them, for Labour anyway. But yeah, sorry, that's taking up a lot of time. Yeah, the nays had it.
I guess, yeah,
that was sandbars.
That's what we heard when I unmuted the video. I just didn't know what the nays had. Now we know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too bad, but okay, so we can watch this video about the swearing in.
We can watch the silly stuff, yeah.
All right.
In friendship and in hope of a reconciled New Ireland, my allegiance is to the people of Belfast South and Mid-Down, and I say these words in order to serve them. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors according to law.
I'm a proud nationalist and I will say these words.
So they still say it at the end, but before that they say stuff like, yeah, I actually have allegiance to the people and whatnot.
Of Aberdeenshire North and Murray East will know who my loyalties lie. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors according to law.
I'll read out this empty formula in order to represent my constituents, but it's under protest. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors according to law. My true allegiance is to the people of Derry and the people of Ireland.
I take this oath under protest and in the hope that one day my fellow citizens will democratically decide to live in a republic. Until that time, I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful.
So this last guy, Clive Lewis,
King Charles,
he messed up slightly when reading this. So the next day, he had to go into Parliament and redo this.
No, really? How did he mess up?
Yeah, he forgot to say his heirs and successors, I think.
To his.
So he had to retake the oath.
According to law.
Yeah, he ended to His Majesty according to law, so he didn't say the heirs and successors. Wow. You literally can't have to say every single damn word.
You do, yeah. But you can choose to say it in different languages and stuff, which is kind of cool.
Great. Any Romanian representation? That would be
I
silly.
don't think there was, yeah.
But could they say it in just any random language?
If they speak it, yeah, they can do it.
Wow.
There's people who do it in Punjabi. There was one guy from the Highlands that did Scotch Gaelic. A lot of the newly elected people from Cornwall, which is in the very southwest of England, they did theirs in Cornish, which I don't know how often you would ever hear Cornish spoken. So that was cool. I feel like you could probably do it in Klingon. I don't know if you could do it in Ubu.
In Ubu?
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah.
Oh, God. Can you have Brian read it out loud for you?
You probably must be able to do it because they would need it for people who are mute or have selective mutism.
Yeah.
So they'd need to have somebody be able to. There's one MP who I believe is partially sighted. They've got a guide dog in Parliament who I feel really sorry for because that dog's got to sit in there while people are screaming and shouting all day.
Oh,
and also
man.
they've got to sit there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Because if these votes are going on, imagine you're spending a lot of time sitting down and then having to get up again. Oh, there he is there on screen.
Where? I don't see.
He was at the very front. He's sitting on the floor now.
Oh, yes.
Or she is, I think.
Good
Does
dog.
the dog have to swear?
Sure, a bark is taken as a...
Yeah. But that was everything that I had. That is everything that is up to date. In fact, we've somehow ended this. Well, maybe not ended the stream, but we're literally at the end of it, looking at right up to date what is happening.
That's pretty good,
Like
right?
yeah. Considering the original ending I had to that script, like, yeah, much better.
I'm also glad because I am I am really too tired to sustain a conversation somehow. Like I'm just staying awake now. Just
Yeah.
barely. Don't know why I'm so tired today, but I am not gonna lie. I'm kind of glad that we are on time with it.
Bard.
Also, Bard sent this page. Apparently, there's like actual pre-written versions in Welsh, Scottish, Gaelic, Cornish.
Yeah.
Why members take an oath of allegiance. Oath of allegiance to the crown are common in the British public life, similar to a declaration of loyalty to the state. Members of both houses of parliament are required by law to take an oath of allegiance to the crown. MPs cannot take their seat, speak in debates, vote, or receive a salary until taking the oath of affirmation. They could also be fined £500 and have their seat declared vacant as if they were dead if they attempted to do so. Jesus. Same rule
This
applies.
is what Sinn Féin does.
Yeah.
So they're basically just vacant for the next 5 years.
Yeah, because they refuse to actually take the oath.
Yeah.
Well, we are at the end. I'm gonna show the last slide because you put the spider cat with the hat in there again. Thank you so much. That was really interesting.
I hope it actually was interesting, especially people in chat, especially people who are not from the UK in chat. I hope it actually was legitimately somewhat interesting, even just a little bit. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thank you for helping put this together.
Well, thank you for putting it together, mostly entirely independently. And we'll see what's next for the Scots talks.
Bye.
Bye.